At 6:07 on a Monday morning, Marlene Voss turned the cardboard sign in the station window from closed to open. The O had a thumbprint in it, Frank's probably. For years he had changed the sign with one hand while carrying coffee in the other, and Frank regarded lids as an insult to a careful man. The station had been closed 8 months, but his brown mark remained. Marlene left it there. Outside, beneath the faded red canopy, the 2 working pumps glowed against the dark. Only 2. The third wore a yellow plastic bag over its handle, cinched at the wrist like a dead thing dressed for rain. She had leased less fuel than the supplier recommended, reopened 1 repair bay instead of 3, and spent the previous night placing buckets beneath leaks the roofer had promised were no longer leaks. Her sons did not know. More precisely, Daniel and Scott knew she had wanted to reopen. They had explained why she couldn't, shouldn't, and, in Daniel's carefully moderated voice, wouldn't. They had not imagined that their mother might hear a family decision and recognize that nobody had asked for her vote. Headlights swung off County Road 9. Marlene straightened behind the counter. Her first customer stopped beside the pumps, stared at the illuminated price board, and lifted a phone. By lunchtime, her sons would see the photograph. For now, a man in blue hospital scrubs stepped inside and said, "Mrs. Voss, please tell me the coffee's back too." 6 days earlier, Daniel had stood in the same office with a tape measure clipped to his belt, though Marlene had never seen him use one. He had driven down from Cleveland in a silver SUV, so clean it looked offended by the parking lot. Scott arrived 12 minutes later in a pickup with 1 cracked taillight and a magnetic sign on the door advertising Voss Custom Kitchens. Crafted for the way you live. The sign had begun peeling at one corner. Both sons carried banker's boxes. Marlene carried Frank's thermos because she had found it beneath the passenger seat of her Buick and had not yet decided what to do with it. "Okay," Daniel said. "We can divide this into keep, donate, and dispose." "Dispose," Scott repeated. "That's warm. It's accurate. It's what hospitals write on bags of feet." Daniel gave him a look. "Why would you say that in front of Mom?" "I'm 71, Marlene said. "I know feet come off." Scott smiled. Daniel did not. That had been the shape of them since boyhood. Scott threw a pebble at the window. Daniel objected to the noise, and somehow Marlene ended up holding the broom. The station smelled stale after 8 months shut tight. Cold oil, mouse droppings, old coffee, and the sweet rubber scent of tires stacked in the back room. Dust had settled over the plastic chair where customers used to wait. Someone had drawn a face in it with 1 finger. Probably Scott, though at 46 he would deny it with the solemnity of a senator. Daniel opened a box and began placing invoice books inside. "Not those," Marlene said. He paused. "Mom, they go back to 1998. Then they've waited this long, they can wait another day. We're trying to help." "I know." That answer always made Daniel suspicious. He preferred resistance he could organize. Scott wandered behind the counter and pressed the key on the old register. Nothing happened. "I used to steal quarters out of this." "You used to think you stole quarters out of it," Marlene said. He turned. "You knew?" "I balanced the drawer." "What did you do?" "Added them back from your allowance." Scott laughed, delighted. "That is cold." Daniel closed the invoice box. "This is exactly why we should get through the office first. There may be account information the buyer needs." "There isn't a buyer yet," Marlene said. "There will be." The regional convenience store company had offered an amount low enough to insult Frank and high enough to interest both sons. Their representative called the station a corner parcel, which made it sound as if the garage, the canopy, and 50 years of winter mornings had happened accidentally on a useful piece of dirt. Scott sat on the counter. "We're not taking that first offer, obviously." "Obviously," Daniel said, "but once they come up, we'd be stupid not to listen." "We are listening. We're just not negotiating against ourselves." They were looking at each other now. Marlene could have stepped out and returned with lunch before either noticed. She unscrewed the thermos lid. It still smelled faintly of Frank's coffee, which he had brewed strong enough to remove paint. The smell reached some tender, unreasonable place below her ribs. She tightened the lid again. "I don't want to sell the station," she said. The quiet that followed was almost pleasant. Scott's boots stopped swinging. Daniel placed both hands on the banker's box. "We've discussed this," he said. "You discussed it near me. Mom, I want to reopen." Scott's first sound was a breath through his nose. Not quite a laugh, but close enough. Daniel pulled out the waiting room chair and wiped the dusty seat with his palm. "Sit down. I've been sitting down since February. I mean, so we can talk. We are talking. He kept his hand on the chair as if proper positioning might make her reasonable. He was 50 years old, broad through the shoulders like Frank, but careful in all the places Frank had been careless. His hair was clipped short. His shirt remained tucked after a 3-hour drive. At Frank's funeral, Daniel had moved through the church basement, collecting empty coffee cups before anybody could ask how he was doing. Scott rubbed his jaw. Reopen how? Unlock the door, turn on the pumps, fix cars. With who? I've made a list. Daniel stared at her. You've made a list. Yes. Of mechanics? Of what needs doing. That is not the same list. I know that. The underground tanks need inspection. The payment system is ancient. The roof leaks. Only over Bay 3. Great. We'll advertise 2 dry bays. Don't be smart with her, Scott said. I'm not being smart. I'm trying to make her hear this. Marlene looked at him. You think I don't know what's wrong with this place? I think Dad handled the operational side. There it was. A small sentence. Daniel did not throw it. He laid it gently between them, believing gentleness changed its weight. Marlene walked to the wall beside the office door. A corkboard hung there beneath a calendar still open to November. She removed an index card and handed it to him. Read that. Daniel adjusted his glasses. Pump 2, intermittent card fault. Compressor belt. North gutter. Bay 1, lift inspection. Call Hensley Fuel about minimum delivery. Turn it over. On the back, she had listed projected costs in blue ink. Scott leaned over his brother's shoulder. Where'd you get these numbers? Hensley, Dario's Roofing, Tom at the pump company. Same place as your father would have called, except he would have waited 3 weeks and complained about the prices before calling me to do it. Daniel returned the card. Even if these numbers are right, they're right. Even if they are, this is not a plan. It's an expensive way to avoid grieving. Scott looked down. Marlene studied Daniel's face. She had spent his first 30 years wishing Frank would stop calling him soft. Now Daniel's voice had Frank's hardness, with all the rough edges polished away. What would proper grieving look like? She asked. That isn't what I said. You want me in a condo near you. I want you somewhere manageable. For whom? His mouth tightened. This place is too much. You don't know what this place is? I grew up here. No. You passed through here angry. The words landed harder than she intended. Daniel's face changed, not dramatically. He simply stopped trying to persuade her. Scott slid off the counter. Can we not do this today? It was the question that had governed their family for years. Not today, not during supper, not while Frank's blood pressure was high, not while Daniel had exams, not when Scott's business was struggling, not at Christmas. Their family had survived by moving every difficult conversation to a day that never arrived. Marlene put Frank's thermos beneath the counter. All right, she said, not today. Daniel took her agreement as surrender. By noon, he had labeled 7 boxes. Scott removed the framed photographs from the waiting room wall, including one of Frank in 1983, younger than either son was now, standing beneath the new red canopy with his hand on the shoulder of a woman mostly cut out of the frame. Only Marlene's left arm remained. Who took this? Scott asked. Your Uncle Ray. He was a terrible photographer. He liked your father. Scott looked closer, then glanced at her as if noticing the missing woman for the first time. He placed the photograph in the keep box. They took her to lunch at Denny's, where Daniel ordered a salad and Scott ordered breakfast at 1:30. They spoke about the property valuation, the traffic count on County Road 9, and whether the old tire inventory had any resale value. Marlene buttered toast and let them mistake silence for consent. In the parking lot, Daniel hugged her longer than usual. I know this is hard, he said. She almost asked which part he meant. Frank being dead, the station being closed, her son sorting her future into labeled boxes. Instead, she patted his back. Drive safely. Scott waited until Daniel's SUV pulled away. Then he leaned against his pickup with his hands in his jacket pockets. You weren't serious, were you? About what? The station. Yes. He watched a truck pass on the county road. Dad couldn't keep it going at the end. Dad was sick. And you're not exactly 25. Neither are you. That's different. How? I know when I'm in over my head. Marlene looked at the peeling sign on his truck. He followed her eyes and gave a short, humorless laugh. Fair. he said. She wanted to ask whether his business was in trouble. She wanted to tell him she had money if he needed it. The offers rose in her by habit, as automatic as reaching for a ringing telephone. She pushed them back down. Scott opened his door. Just don't spend anything until we all agree, okay? We don't all own the property. But the equipment's tied up with the estate. I know what's tied up. His expression hardened. Then, don't make this a fight. He drove off before she could tell him fights were often named by the person who expected obedience. That evening, Marlene returned to the station alone. The sun had dropped behind the soybean fields, and the canopy cast a long red shadow across the cracked pavement. She entered through the side door, turned on the office lights, and listened as the fluorescent tubes flickered awake one by one. 7 labeled boxes waited against the wall. Keep, donate, dispose. Daniel had beautiful handwriting. Even his capital letters looked calm. Marlene opened the dispose box. Inside were 3 cracked coffee mugs, obsolete catalogs, a desk blotter, 2 dead calculators, and the little brass bell that used to sit on the counter before Frank decided its ringing annoyed him. She lifted the bell and shook it. The note was thin but clear. From the garage came a scrape. Marlene froze, bell in hand. Another scrape, followed by a muttered word that Frank had used for stubborn bolts and elected officials. She took the heavy flashlight from beneath the counter and pushed open the door to Bay 1. A woman in a canvas work jacket stood beside the workbench, holding an old socket wrench. Tasha Green had more gray in her hair than the last time Marlene had seen her, but the same level stare. Side window doesn't latch, Tasha said. You should fix that before somebody less honest notices. Marlene lowered the flashlight. You climbed through it? I was testing the honesty problem. You always did take your work seriously. Tasha set the wrench on the bench. Heard you might be selling. Everybody hears quickly when they're wrong. Tasha's eyes moved over the dark bays, the covered lift, and the tools Scott and Daniel had not yet boxed. Then what are you doing? Marlene looked back toward the office where Daniel's labels faced the door. I'm making a different list, she said. Tasha folded her arms. Different from what? Different from selling. That narrows it down to almost everything. I'm reopening. Tasha stared at her long enough for the compressor in the back room to click as it cooled, though it had not run in months. By yourself? No. Good. Who's the mechanic? I was hoping that part might interest you. Tasha laughed once. There was no pleasure in it. You found me inside your building holding a wrench, so you offered me employment? I found you inside my building after dark. I'm trying to keep the conversation friendly. Call the sheriff. He'll take 40 minutes to get here, and then he'll ask me to check his brakes. That nearly earned a smile. Tasha picked up the socket wrench again, wiped it with her sleeve, and returned it to the correct outline on the pegboard. Frank had painted those outlines in white so he could tell what was missing from across the bay. The wrench had been hanging one hook too far to the left. I heard the boys were clearing the place, Tasha said. I wanted to see if this was still here. Sentimental? It belongs to me. Marlene looked at the worn grip. A stripe of green paint ran around the handle. Tasha tapped it with one finger. My father marked every tool that way. Frank borrowed it in 2004. He had a flexible definition of borrowing. He had a flexible definition of a lot of things. The air changed. Marlene could have said Frank had been sick. She could have said death required courtesy. She could have reminded Tasha that 20 years was a long time to remain angry about 6 months of work. Instead, she said, you should take it. Tasha slid the wrench into her jacket pocket. I should have taken it in 2004. Yes. That answer made Tasha look at her. Marlene set the flashlight on the workbench. Are you still with Kepler Delivery? Kepler shut the local maintenance shop. Trucks go to Mansfield now. When? End of last month. I'm sorry. They gave me a plastic travel mug and a number for unemployment. Good mug? Leaks. Frank would have called that severance. This time Tasha did smile, though she turned away as if Marlene had not earned it. She walked around the lift in Bay 1, inspecting without touching. When was this certified? Last October, so it's due. I called Earl Benson. He can come Thursday. Earl's 76. He says he's 74. Earl's been 74 since the Obama administration. He still inspects the county trucks. That does not comfort me. Marlene waited. Tasha crouched beside the lift column. Her knee cracked loudly. You hear that? She asked. The lift? My body rejecting your job offer. You haven't heard the pay. You don't know what you can pay. 28 an hour to start, 4 days a week until business picks up. You choose the days, but one has to be Saturday. Tasha rose slowly. Benefits? Not yet. Tools? Complicated. Customers? Hypothetical. Heat? Temperamental. Your sons? Opposed. Frank? Dead. Tasha's eyes held hers. You always did save the best answer for last. She wandered to the office door and looked through it. You know I can get 32 at the dealership. Then why haven't you? Because they want nights, and I'm done eating dinner out of vending machines. I can't promise this will work. I'd trust you less if you did. Marlene felt hope move too quickly inside her and pressed it down. Hope was how people agreed to bad roofing estimates. 12 weeks guaranteed, she said. Even if we're slow, I can cover that. From what? My savings. All of them? No. How much of them? That's an inappropriate question for a job interview. So is climbing through the window. You brought it up first. Tasha leaned against the doorframe. Why now? Because the station's closed. It was closed yesterday. I was busy yesterday. With your sons. With being informed about my future. Tasha studied the labels on the boxes. Which one did they put you in? Marlene should have been offended. Instead, a laugh escaped her so suddenly it hurt her chest. Tasha nodded toward the office. Show me the numbers. They stayed until nearly 10. Tasha rejected Marlene's first operating budget because it assumed every customer would pay immediately. She rejected the second because Marlene had estimated utilities from the previous spring, when Frank had kept the thermostat at 60 and worn 2 shirts rather than admit he was cold. She added money for disposal fees, absorbent pads, filters, gloves, and coffee. Coffee is not a shop supply, Marlene said. It is if you expect me here at 7. You just said you were done with vending machine dinners. Breakfast has different laws. They sat at Frank's desk, shoulder to shoulder, without intimacy. Marlene wrote in blue ink. Tasha used a mechanical pencil and erased so aggressively she tore the corner of the page. At the bottom of the third version, the number remained frightening, but survivable. I can't put in more than this, Marlene said, circling the figure. If we reach it without covering our monthly costs, we stop. You will actually stop? I will complain first. For how long? 2 days. Put that in writing. Marlene drew a line under the number. Tasha took her jacket from the chair. I'll come Thursday when Earl inspects the lift. That's not a yes. What is it? It's a Thursday. After she left through the door, Marlene checked the side window. The latch had not caught since a delivery man forced it during the summer of 2016. Frank had wedged a folded matchbook into the frame and declared it fixed. Marlene removed the matchbook and added latch to her list. At home, she heated tomato soup and ate it standing at the kitchen counter. Frank's chair faced the television. His slippers remained beneath the footrest, toes angled toward each other. Daniel had offered to box his clothes. Scott had offered to take them to the veterans' charity. Marlene had said not today, using the phrase for herself this time. She carried her bowl to the small table by the window. The house made noises she had never heard while Frank was alive. Pipes settled. The refrigerator sighed. A branch brushed the siding with a dry, persistent finger. She had once believed silence would feel restful if she could get enough of it. Her phone rang. Daniel's name lit the screen. She let it ring twice before answering. Hello? You sound tired. I'm eating soup. At 10:15? The soup doesn't know. He exhaled. I emailed you 2 condo listings. Just look at them. I don't want a condo. You don't know that. One has a sunroom. So does a greenhouse. Mom? She took another spoonful. Did you need something? I wanted to make sure you got home all right. I did. And to say I'm sorry about earlier. The apology softened her before she could prevent it. Daniel continued. We pushed too hard. There's no reason we have to decide this week. We, you, me, and Scott. There are things I can decide by myself. I know that. He said it too quickly. Marlene looked at the dark window over the sink, at her own reflection floating above the backyard. Good night, Daniel. Just promise you won't spend any money yet. She could have lied. Mothers did it constantly for the peace of their sons, though nobody called it lying when the sons were small enough to carry. No, she said. The silence on his end felt longer than the one in the house. No, you won't spend it? No, I won't promise. Marlene. He had never called her by her first name. She set down the spoon. Good night. Wednesday morning, she drove to the bank. The manager, Peggy Mills, had known Marlene for 31 years and still asked whether Frank would be joining them. Then Peggy's face collapsed. Oh, Marlene. I'm sorry. Of course he won't. No, Marlene said. Frank has become very unreliable about appointments. Peggy stared at her, then laughed behind one hand. The laugh turned briefly into tears. Marlene waited until she found a tissue. They transferred a portion of Marlene's savings into the station account. Not all of it. Not even most. Enough to pay the fuel lease, repairs, insurance, initial payroll, and the bills that would arrive before customers did. Peggy turned her monitor slightly. Are you sure? No, that's not the answer they train us for. It's the answer I have. Peggy nodded. Then we'll work with it. By Thursday afternoon, the station had begun making noise again. Earl Benson arrived in coveralls with his name embroidered above the pocket and a hearing aid he refused to turn up because, according to him, most people had nothing useful to say. Tasha came 6 minutes later, carrying a metal toolbox and the leaking Kepler travel mug. The lift passed inspection after a hose replacement and 40 minutes of Earl insulting its manufacturer. The compressor needed a belt, but not a motor. The card reader on pump 2 failed 3 tests and passed the 4th, which Tasha said made it religious rather than mechanical. Dario's crew patched the roof over Bay 3. Rain that evening revealed a new leak 2 feet from the old one. Technically, Dario told Marlene on the phone, that is a different leak. Technically, you are coming back. He came back. Marlene called suppliers, the insurer, the county office, and every former customer whose number she could read without guessing. She did not announce a grand reopening. She said, "We'll be open Monday, limited service at first." The words felt more dangerous each time they became real. Tasha spent Friday sorting tools into 3 groups: usable, replace, and belongs to one of the boys. You need another group, Marlene said. Borrowed and never returned. That would empty half the county. Behind the parts cabinet, they found a dented lunchbox containing 6 spark plugs, a socket extension, and $11 in coins. Scott, Marlene said. How do you know? He hid money in containers nobody would willingly open. Tasha set the lunchbox aside. He's still in kitchens? Yes. Any good? When he takes his time. That wasn't my question. Marlene glanced at her. Tasha held up both hands. Not today. The old phrase did not feel like avoidance in Tasha's mouth. It felt like notice that the bill remained unpaid. On Sunday evening, Marlene stood beneath the roadside sign with a plastic bucket of number tiles. The sunset turned the canopy's faded paint briefly bright. Her shoulders hurt from carrying cleaning supplies. Her right thumb had split beside the nail. She had spent more in 5 days than she had ever spent without discussing it with Frank. Tasha steadied the ladder. You sure about the price? She asked. No. Bank manager trained you to say that? I'm developing a reputation. Marlene climbed. The second rung pinched her left shoe. The 4th made her knees object. She kept going. You fall, Tasha said. I'm telling your sons I tried to stop you. You don't have their numbers. I'll find them at the condo with the sunroom. Marlene looked down. How do you know about that? You talk when you're mad. I do not. You gave me the square footage. The new numbers clicked into place one at a time. They were not the cheapest in the county. They were enough, she hoped, to keep the lights on. When she descended, Tasha took the empty bucket from her. So, Marlene said, is tomorrow still a Thursday? Tasha looked at the illuminated sign, the patched roof, and the 2 pumps waiting beneath the canopy. No, she said. Tomorrow's a Monday. At 6:07, Marlene turned the sign. The first customer in hospital scrubs bought coffee, complained that it was too weak, and returned for a refill. A plumber filled his van. A woman on her way to a 12-hour shift asked whether the restroom was open and blessed Marlene when it was. At 8:20, a retired farmer named Walt Baines photographed the station from across the road. At 11:43, Marlene's phone began to ring. Daniel's name filled the screen. Across the counter, Tasha looked at it, then at Marlene. You want me to answer? Marlene wiped her hands on a towel. Absolutely not. Shame. I had a whole speech. The phone stopped. 3 seconds later, it rang again. Marlene picked it up. Voss service. Daniel did not say hello. Tell me that photograph is old. It was taken this morning, Marlene said. Daniel breathed into the phone. She could hear a door close on his end, then the padded quiet of somewhere expensive. You opened? Yes. You actually opened the station. That is usually what the sign means. You spent money after I specifically asked you not to. No. You asked me to promise I wouldn't. I specifically refused. Tasha busied herself arranging coffee lids, though they both knew the lids were already arranged. Daniel lowered his voice. Who is there with you? Tasha Green. A pause. Who? Tasha held out her hand for the phone. Marlene turned away from her. She worked here years ago. Is she a mechanic? She is. Licensed? Insured? Did you check references? Tasha mouthed. Ask if he wants my blood type. Marlene pointed toward Bay 1. Tasha went, but not before taking the coffee lids with her for no reason. Daniel, I have customers. You have no business being open. The county, the insurance company, and the fuel supplier disagree. I'm not talking about paperwork. Neither am I. A man at pump 1 lifted the nozzle and looked toward the window. Marlene could hear the pump ticking through the open office door. That sound had measured most of her adult life. Pennies, then nickels, then dollars. Frank used to complain that people blamed him personally every time gasoline went up. Daniel said, close for the day. No, until we can all sit down. No, will you stop saying that? Ask me something else. The man outside replaced the nozzle and came in to pay for a pack of gum. He recognized Daniel's voice leaking from the phone and became deeply interested in the display of windshield wipes. Marlene covered the receiver. $2.89. He placed $3 on the counter. Keep it. You want a receipt? Not enough to stay? He hurried out. Daniel waited until the door shut. Is that how you're running it? Taking cash while arguing with me? It's how I raised you. I'm leaving work. You'll miss dinner. I'm coming down. The line went dead. Marlene returned the phone to its cradle. Tasha leaned through the office doorway. Blood type's O positive. He didn't ask. Hospital administrator, and he doesn't ask the important questions. He's worried. Sounds painful. Marlene put the gum money in the drawer. Her hand shook slightly, which annoyed her more than Daniel had. How many lids does one coffee station need? You were facing the display. I was providing emotional cover. Next time, wipe something. Then I'll expect a raise. The morning continued with insulting normalcy. People bought fuel. 3 came inside only to say they were glad the station was open, which did not pay much but took several minutes apiece. Walt Baines arrived carrying a foam cup from home and asked whether Marlene planned to bring back full-service pumping. For you, she said. No, I'm 80. You were lazy at 40. Walt grinned and left $20 on pump 2. At 10:15, a home care nurse named Sheila Morgan came in holding a loose side mirror against her car with silver tape. Tasha examined it and gave her a price that included a replacement from a salvage yard. Can you do it today? Sheila asked. If Hank answers his phone and still has the blue Impala he swears he has. Sheila looked at Marlene. Frank used to let me pay Fridays. Tasha's eyes moved between them. Marlene opened the old customer notebook beneath the register. Sheila's name appeared on 3 pages over 7 years, every balance crossed out in Marlene's handwriting. Friday's fine, Marlene said. After Sheila left, Tasha stood with both hands on her hips. What? You budgeted for immediate payment. She always pays. That's not the point. It becomes the point on Friday. You planning to reopen Frank's bank too? No. His interest rates were unreasonable. Tasha tried to remain stern. She lasted 4 seconds. The first trouble came just before noon when Pump 2 swallowed a man's card and displayed "Remove Card" without allowing him to remove it. Tasha took off the front panel while Marlene apologized. This is why I use cash, the man said. You used a card, Marlene pointed out. This is why I'm going back to cash. Tasha freed it with a pair of narrow pliers and shut the pump down. The repair company could not send anyone until Wednesday. 1 pump, she said when they returned to the office. We are now half the gas station we were at breakfast. We're still all of the bathroom. Put that on the sign. Marlene made cheese sandwiches on the workbench. Tasha ate hers standing beside the open bay, watching traffic pass. Some cars slowed when they saw the prices. A few turned in. Most continued toward the chain station near the interstate. At one, a fuel truck rolled beneath the canopy. Tasha looked at the gauge sheet. I thought Hensley delivered Friday. Minimum load, Friday. This is the balance. We can't sell it if we can't pump it. Pump 1 works. Never say that where equipment can hear you. The driver, a broad man named Curtis, connected the hoses. Marlene had known him since he drove for his uncle's company, though he had grown a beard that made him look like he slept in a forest. He handed her the delivery form. Good seeing lights on again. Good seeing you employed. Frank said retirement was a character flaw. Frank had several opinions that protected him from helping. Curtis laughed and reached for his pen. A silver SUV came into the lot too quickly and stopped at an angle beside the truck. Daniel stepped out in charcoal slacks and the same polished shoes he had worn 6 days earlier. He walked toward Curtis without greeting Marlene. You need to disconnect that. Curtis looked at him, then at her. I do? No, Marlene said. Daniel pointed at the hose. There's a dispute regarding this business. No further deliveries should be made until it's resolved. Curtis stopped smiling. You want to tell me what kind of dispute? There is no dispute, Marlene said. Finish the delivery. I'm her son. I guessed, Curtis said. Daniel glanced at the station, taking in the cars, the open bay, and the temporary out-of-order sign Tasha had taped to Pump 2. Who authorized the account? I did, Marlene said. You're putting him in the middle. Curtis studied the hose as if considering whether he could climb into it. Marlene took the form from his clipboard and signed. There. You're no longer in the middle. Daniel looked at her signature. You're not listening. I've listened to you for 6 days. Then you know what can go wrong. I've known that for 50 years. You don't know what you're risking. Marlene named the cost of the leased fuel, the insurance premium, the pump service call, Tasha's guaranteed wages, the lift hose, the compressor belt, the roof repair, and the amount she had reserved for utilities. Daniel's face changed as the figures continued. She finished with the balance remaining in the operating account. Curtis cleared his throat. I can come back for the signature later. You have it, Marlene said. He retreated toward the truck. Daniel followed her inside. The bell over the door gave one cheerful jingle. He looked around at the coffee station, the receipts clipped in order, and the little brass service bell Marlene had rescued from his dispose box. You went through the boxes, they were in my office. I spent an entire day sorting those. You did beautiful work. That isn't funny. It wasn't meant to be. Tasha entered from the bay, wiping her hands. Daniel, right? He looked her over. It was not a rude look exactly. It was the fast inventory of a man trained to identify liabilities before they spoke. Tasha Green, she said. Oh, positive. I'm sorry. Your mother said you didn't ask. Marlene closed her eyes briefly. Daniel turned to her. Can we talk privately? Tasha's working. That's why I said privately. Marlene led him into the back parts room, where shelves of belts and filters narrowed the space between them. Daniel shut the door. A faded advertisement for snow tires hung behind his head. Are you trying to punish us? He asked. The question surprised her. For what? Wanting to sell. Wanting you somewhere safe. For leaving this place when we had the chance. This isn't about punishing you. You hid it from us. I told you what I wanted. You knew we didn't agree. Yes, and did it anyway. She looked at her son, at the small muscle tightening beside his mouth. Daniel had spent his life collecting agreement before acting, committees, budgets, consultations. Frank had called him timid for it. Marlene had called him thoughtful. Now she wondered how often his careful process ended with someone less forceful surrendering. You make decisions every day without my permission, she said. My decisions don't endanger you. Moving me to Cleveland would. His expression sharpened. How? I'd be lonely. You're lonely here? At least, here I know the names of the people who aren't calling. The words came out before she could soften them. Daniel looked toward the closed door. Through it came the metallic clink of Tasha setting down a tool. I call, he said. You check. What does that mean? You ask whether I took my pills. You ask about the furnace. You ask if I've called the realtor. When was the last time you called me without discussing my house, my money, my health, or where you think I should live? I have responsibilities. I know. Apparently I'm one. His face went pale beneath the fluorescent light. For 1 second, Marlene wanted to take it back. The old instinct rose. Repair the room, protect Daniel from the sharp edge of what she had said. Protect herself from the hours afterward when she would replay his expression. She placed her hands in her cardigan pockets. Daniel opened the door, closed the station. No. For today. No. Then don't expect me to pretend this is normal. He walked through the office. At the entrance, his polished shoe landed in a dark crescent of grease tracked from the bay. Daniel stared down at it. Tasha silently offered him a rag. "I'm fine," he said. "That floor eats dress shoes." I said, "I'm fine." He left without the rag. Marlene watched through the window as he crossed the lot, leaving faint black marks behind him. He sat in his SUV without starting it. Tasha came to stand beside her. "You want me to say something comforting?" "No." "Good. I'm terrible at it." A minute passed. Curtis finished the delivery and drove away. Daniel remained behind the wheel. Then Marlene's phone rang. For one foolish instant, she thought he was calling from the parking lot. The display showed Scott. She answered. "Hello?" "What did you do to him?" Scott asked. Marlene looked through the glass at Daniel's motionless SUV. "I opened the station," she said. "No, I mean Daniel. He called me from your parking lot and said you're blowing the family apart." Behind her, Tasha rang the little brass bell. A customer was waiting. Marlene turned from the window. Then he finally noticed the cracks. The waiting customer was a woman in a burgundy coat holding a windshield wiper in both hands. "It came off," she said. Tasha took it from her. "That's generally considered a failure. I was on the highway. Then it's an exciting failure." Marlene kept Scott on the phone while Tasha followed the woman outside. "Daniel's sitting in his car," she said. "Because you said something. We both said several things." "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Answer like you're testifying." Through the window, Tasha fitted the wiper arm back onto the woman's sedan. Daniel's SUV still occupied the far side of the lot. Sunlight flashed on the windshield, hiding him. Scott said, "You could have told us you were opening today. I told you I wanted to open." "That is not the same thing." "I'm hearing that a lot." "Because it's true. You let us leave thinking we had time." "Time for what?" "To talk you out of it." Marlene leaned one hip against the counter. "At least you're honest. I'm not trying to run your life." "No, you're trying to sell part of it. I am trying to keep all three of us from losing money." The urgency beneath his voice was new. Scott normally treated money as weather, unfortunate when it turned against him, unlikely to improve through discussion. "You won't lose anything today," she said. "You don't know that. Neither do you." "I'm coming tomorrow." "Daniel came today." "Yes, and apparently you broke him. He's in hospital administration. They're hard to break." "I'm serious, Mom. So am I." Scott was quiet. Then his voice changed, turning lighter in the way it did when he wanted something, without wanting to sound as if he wanted it. "Nothing leaves the station, okay?" Marlene looked toward the pegboard in Bay 1. "I'm not selling equipment or using anything major." "What does that mean?" "The compressor, the lifts, the diagnostic gear, anything that affects value. The compressor is running." He swore softly. "The belt was $36, she said. "That's not the point. It was the compressor's point." "I'll be there in the morning." He hung up. Outside, Daniel's brake lights came on. His SUV backed out carefully, avoiding the fuel caps and the shallow pothole near the road. He did not look toward the office. Tasha returned with $7 and the broken wiper blade. "She tried to pay me $20, she said. "I told her we only rob people on Fridays. Scott's coming tomorrow. Do we rob family on Tuesdays?" "He doesn't want us using the equipment." Tasha examined the wiper's torn rubber. Then he shouldn't have stored it in a working garage. The first day ended with $312 in fuel sales, 1 oil change, 4 coffees, 2 wiper blades, and a promise from Sheila Morgan to pay for her mirror on Friday. Against payroll, fuel, electricity, parts, and the pump repair still to come, the station had moved backward. Marlene knew that. She entered every sale, counted the drawer twice, and carried the deposit home in a zippered bank pouch that felt offensively light. Still, when she switched off the canopy lights, darkness seemed to fall too quickly. 7 tomorrow?" Tasha asked. 8. "You said we opened at 7. We do. I'll handle the first hour." "You don't know who'll come in." "That's true of every hour." Tasha looked at Marlene's hands. "You've been rubbing that thumb since lunch. I split the nail. You've been on your feet since 5. I sat during Daniel. That doesn't count. Anger supports the spine." Marlene locked the front door. 8. Tasha jingled her keys. 7:30. "Fine. See? I'm already controlling you." At home, Marlene put the bank pouch on the kitchen table and sat in Frank's chair without removing her coat. The recliner gave under her in unfamiliar places. Frank had worn a hollow into the cushion, and Marlene's smaller body tilted toward the armrest. The television remote lay where he had always kept it. She pressed the power button. A man on the news stood in front of a map, the color of bruises and warned of an early cold snap. Marlene woke after midnight with her neck bent and one shoe missing. The television was selling a copper bracelet for joint pain. A plate of food appeared beside the bracelet, though no one explained why. She turned it off. In the sudden quiet, she remembered Daniel sitting behind his windshield and wondered whether she had mistaken cruelty for courage. Then she remembered his voice ordering the fuel truck away. Both things could be true. That was the trouble with people. They refused to remain simple enough to judge comfortably. The station furnace failed at 7:15 the next morning. It began with a metallic banging beneath the office floor, followed by a breath of air that smelled scorched. Marlene shut it down and called the service company. The dispatcher could send someone Thursday. "It is Tuesday," Marlene said. "Yes, ma'am. There are days between those. We have a cancellation list. Put me at the top. I can put you on it." That sounds like the same sentence, but weaker. The dispatcher was unmoved. By 8, Marlene could see her breath in Bay 2. Tasha arrived wearing insulated coveralls and carrying a red space heater beneath one arm. "You knew?" Marlene asked. "I saw the weather. You own that?" "I'm a single woman with an old furnace. I own 3. They placed it beneath the desk. It warmed Marlene's ankles and nothing else. The pump technician arrived at 9. Pump 2 needed a new reader, not an adjustment, and the part would take 2 days. Marlene authorized it while Tasha watched her write the amount on the blue operating sheet. "Still under the line," Marlene said, "for now. Your optimism is comforting. I left it in the Kepler mug. It leaked out." Scott arrived at 10:30 pulling a flatbed utility trailer. He wore a work jacket with his company logo embroidered over the heart. The thread had pulled loose from the V, making the family name look like yaws from a distance. 2 men rode with him, both older than Scott and dressed for lifting. Marlene stepped outside before he could enter. "What's the trailer for?" "Equipment. You said nothing should leave, nothing you were using. We're using the garage. You're using one bay." Tasha appeared behind Marlene. She did not speak. Scott nodded at her. "Tasha, Scott, you remember me?" "I remember the people I work with." His eyes shifted away first. Marlene caught it. The old history stood between them, still closed to her sons, but Tasha had opened the door a crack. Scott handed Marlene a printed inventory. Yellow highlights marked 9 items, the newer diagnostic tablet, the portable battery tester, a wheel-bearing press kit, 2 specialty jack stands, the refrigerant recovery machine, a transmission jack, and several box tools Frank had bought during his last working year. "These are part of the estate equipment," he said. "Daniel and I have an interest in them. So do I, which is why I'm not selling anything." "Where are you taking them?" "My warehouse. Climate-controlled, insured, and not being used for a business we didn't authorize." Tasha took the inventory. "Your warehouse climate-controlled?" "The office section." "Transmission jack going to answer phones?" Scott did not smile. "I'm protecting the equipment." "From grease?" "From depreciation. Tools depreciate while sitting too. Then we'll have them valued." Marlene looked at the 2 men in the truck. One pretended to check his phone. The other studied the canopy as if evaluating its architecture. "You brought help before speaking to me," she said. "I spoke to you yesterday. You announced yourself, and I knew what you'd say. So, you've discovered the efficiency of not asking." His face tightened. "You reopened without asking us. I didn't need permission. You keep saying that like it makes what you did right." A customer turned into the lot, saw the trailer blocking Bay 1, and continued around the building without stopping. Scott gestured toward the road. "This is exactly what I mean. You've been open one day, and you're already spending thousands on something that barely has customers. Then the equipment isn't at much risk. Mom, don't. Don't what? Make me the bad guy because I'm the only one acting like numbers matter." Marlene thought of the peeling truck sign and the urgency in his voice. "What numbers?" His expression closed. "Estate numbers?" he said. Tasha handed back the inventory. "If you take the diagnostic tablet, I can't service anything newer than my coffee mug. You worked before Dad bought it. So did horses." Scott turned to his helpers. "Start with the boxed items in the storage room." Marlene moved into the doorway. The 2 men stopped. "Mom," Scott said quietly. She could forbid them entry. She could call a lawyer and turn a family argument into billable hours. She could make a scene large enough for every passing car to slow down and enjoy it. But Scott's name was on the equipment inventory beside hers and Daniel's. The estate had not been fully divided. She knew exactly where certainty ended. "You take only what's highlighted," she said. "Tasha checks every item, and you sign for it. I made the list. You sign mine." For the next hour, metal rolled, scraped, and disappeared into Scott's trailer. Tasha inspected each item with a flat, professional silence. Marlene wrote serial numbers on a yellow legal pad. Scott signed beside them. Nobody raised a voice. That made it worse. When the diagnostic tablet came out, Tasha held it for a moment before surrendering it. "There's a customer file saved on this," she said. "We'll copy it later. We need it now. You've been open 27 hours. How many customers could you have? One more than you think." Scott took the tablet. He left the old manual scanner on the workbench. Its cracked screen displayed vehicles only through 2008. After the trailer pulled away, the garage felt picked over. Empty rectangles marked the shelves where boxed tools had rested. Tasha opened a drawer and slammed it shut. "You knew he'd do that?" she asked. "No. You knew he could." "Yes." "That distinction isn't helping me. I can replace what we need." "With what money?" Marlene looked toward the blue sheet in the office. Tasha followed her gaze. "Exactly." A white plumbing van rolled into the lot with a high squeal from the front wheel. The driver climbed out and said he had 4 appointments, a grinding noise, and nowhere else nearby that could look at it today. Tasha crouched beside the wheel. She rocked it with both hands, listened, and stood. "Bearing," she said. The driver looked relieved. "Can you fix it?" Tasha glanced at the empty shelf where the press kit had been. Marlene already knew the answer. The job would have paid well. More importantly, it would have brought the van back on the road before the man lost a day's work. "We can diagnose it," Tasha said. "We can get the part, but we can't press the bearing here." "Why not?" Tasha wiped her hands on a rag. "Family values," she said. The plumber looked from Tasha to Marlene. "That a no?" "It's a not here," Tasha said. "I can pull the hub, but somebody else has to press the bearing." "How long?" "If Palmer Machine answers his phone, 2 hours. If he doesn't, it depends which tavern serves lunch on Tuesdays." The man checked his watch. "I've got a furnace hookup at 1. Then you need to call and move it. I can't keep moving jobs, neither can your wheel." He rubbed both hands over his face. His name was Greg Larkin, according to the side of the van and the old account notebook beneath Marlene's register. Frank had written slow pay in the margin 8 years earlier. Marlene had later crossed out slow and added always. "Do it," Greg said. "Whatever it takes." Tasha raised the van with the lift Scott had not removed. By 11:30, the hub sat on the workbench beside a new bearing from the parts store. Palmer Machine did not answer. Marlene tried twice, then called Earl Benson. "You're asking the wrong question," Earl told her. "I'm asking where Dale Palmer eats lunch. He's dead." Marlene sat straighter. "Since when?" 2 years. "Why is his machine shop still listed?" Dale never liked changing things. "That appears to include his condition." Earl coughed in a way that might have been laughter. "Call Ortega Upholstery on Mill. Luis has a press. Don't ask why. I'm going to ask why, then ask Luis." Ortega Upholstery occupied the rear half of a low brick warehouse behind a feed store. Marlene found the entrance by following handwritten arrows taped to 3 different doors. The final arrow pointed beneath a sign that said, "Shipping only." Inside, rolls of vinyl stood upright, like brightly colored lumber. 2 truck seats rested on metal stands. An older man with silver hair tied at the base of his neck worked a curved needle through a piece of brown leather. "I'm looking for Luis Ortega." The man glanced behind himself. "He is avoiding customers." "Are you Luis?" "Depends what you want." "A bearing pressed." "Then I am not Luis." "Earl Benson said you have a press." "Earl Benson also says he's 74. Now I trust you?" The man smiled, set down the leather, and wiped his fingers on a cloth. "Let me see it." Luis examined the hub, named a price, then stopped when Marlene agreed. "You're supposed to argue. I have a plumber losing money by the hour. Then I should charge more. You already named the price." A terrible business habit. He worked carefully, saying little. The press occupied a corner between a rack of seat frames and a refrigerator covered in takeout menus. Through an open door, Marlene could see much more space than Luis used. Half the warehouse was dark. "You just moved in?" she asked. 11 years ago. "Then why is everything crowded over here?" "New landlord doubled the rent on the full unit. I gave up the front half. He has not found anyone willing to pay what he wants, but this way we are both unhappy." The bearing released with a loud crack. Marlene flinched. Luis did not. Machines like drama. He pressed in the new bearing and handed the hub back wrapped in a clean shop towel. "What kind of station sends wheel bearings to an upholstery man?" he asked. "One missing a press kit." "What happened to it?" "My son protected it from being useful." Luis considered this. "Family business. Not anymore, according to my family. Those are usually the most family businesses." Back at the station, Tasha installed the hub, while Greg Larkin paced near the office heater and made phone calls. His 1 o'clock customer agreed to wait. His 2:30 did not. He lost one appointment, but the van was ready before 3. The job made less than it should have after parts, Luis's fee, and the discount Marlene offered for the delay. It still made money. Greg stood beside the van listening as Tasha explained the repair. Frank would have had that press. "Frank did have that press," Tasha said. Marlene gave her a warning look. "What?" Tasha asked. "I didn't name which son. Greg paid in full." When the van left without squealing, Marlene felt a satisfaction too large for the numbers on the invoice. They had found a way around a problem Scott intended to make final. Tasha washed her hands at the utility sink. "Don't get pleased. I'm not." "You're humming. I have poor circulation. My teeth are vibrating. You drove across town, paid a subcontractor, and discounted the labor. We can't do that every time. We won't." "Because?" "We're going to buy our own press." Tasha shut off the water. "With what?" "Not this week. That's not an answer. It's the one I have." Tasha dried her hands and looked at the empty marks on the shelf. Scott always did know which mistake would cost somebody else. Marlene heard what lay beneath it. "He should not have taken the tools," she said. "That's not what I meant, I know." Tasha tossed the paper towel into the bin. "Do you?" The station door opened before Marlene could answer. Sheila Morgan entered carrying a paper bag. "I brought muffins," she announced, "the healthy kind, so they taste like insulation." She had come to approve the replacement mirror Tasha found at the salvage yard. The blue paint was one shade darker than her car, but Sheila said matching mirrors encourage vanity. She left 2 muffins and promised again to pay Friday. By closing, the furnace remained broken, pump 2 remained covered, and the blue operating sheet had acquired 3 new expenses. Tasha took the heater home because she needed it overnight. Marlene worked another hour wearing her coat and Frank's fingerless gloves. The phone rang as she totaled parts receipts. "Voss service," she answered. A woman said, "Marlene, thank God." The voice was familiar, but not from the station. "This is Janice at Brunswick Cabinet Supply." Marlene looked at the clock. "Hello, Janice. I've been trying Scott for 6 days." The pencil stopped in Marlene's hand. Janice continued quickly. "I know you don't handle his books anymore, and I hate bringing you into it, but he said last time that if there was ever an issue—" "What issue?" "The Riverside order." Marlene knew the name. Scott had mentioned it at Frank's funeral, a complete kitchen and laundry renovation in a house overlooking the river. He had described the client's demands for custom walnut fronts with the weary pride of a man holding expensive trouble. Janice named an unpaid amount. Marlene wrote it in the margin without meaning to. It was more than Scott had owed Brunswick during the bad year, when he had come to her kitchen with 3 months of unopened envelopes and claimed he only needed help organizing them. Marlene had paid 2 suppliers then. Frank never knew the full amount. "How late?" she asked. 43 days. We can't release the rest of the order. Have you spoken to the client?" "No. We do business with Scott, not as customers." "Good. Marlene, I'm not asking you to pay it." That meant Janice had called, hoping she might. "I don't keep his accounts," Marlene said. "I know. I just thought you could get him to call. I can do that." Relief warmed Janice's voice. "Thank you. I said I can tell him to call. I didn't say I can get him to." When they hung up, Marlene sat in the cold office with the amount written beside the station's own expenses. Scott had looked at her and said, "Estate numbers." She called him. He answered after 4 rings. "What?" Janice Brunswick called. Nothing moved on his end. Even the background went still. "Why is she calling you?" "She couldn't reach you?" That doesn't answer my question. She remembered that I helped before. I told her not to involve you. So, there is something to involve me in. Scott let out a breath. One customer is late on a progress payment, that's all. Then why are you 43 days behind? Because I ordered ahead to keep the schedule. You didn't have the cash. I had it until 2 other jobs shifted. Shifted where? Mom, I am not doing this. Is that why you took the equipment? No. You have a buyer? I said I'm not selling it. Were you planning to borrow against it? His silence answered before he did. It's collateral, he said. Not a sale. That equipment is not yours alone. Neither is the station business apparently, but you didn't care about that. The business is mine. Some of the equipment isn't. Right? You found the exact legal line that lets you do what you want. This isn't about a legal line. Everything is about a line when you're standing on the convenience side. Marlene closed the operating sheet. How much do you owe altogether? I have receivables. That wasn't my question. I don't need you to rescue me. You called me from a parking lot 3 years ago and said the same thing. Then you sat at my kitchen table until 2 in the morning. I paid you back. Some. I'm working on it. No, Scott, I stopped asking. He went quiet. Marlene pressed her fingers to her forehead. She had wanted him to admit it so she could decide what to do. Now that the truth sat between them, every old response in her had already risen. Transfer the money, call Janice, protect his reputation, tell herself it was a loan. Keep it from Daniel because he would judge Scott. Keep it from Frank because he would humiliate him. Scott spoke more softly. If the property sells, this gets handled. There it was, not greed. Fear wearing greed's coat. You were counting on the sale. I was counting on us making the sensible decision. You mean I was supposed to sell my station so no one would find out your business was failing? It is not failing. What happens if Riverside walks? They won't. What happens? I figure it out. How? Not with your money. The answer had pride in it, but also accusation, as if she had made his dependence possible and now insulted him by noticing. Marlene looked at the dark garage. Scott's empty rectangles remained on the shelves. Return the equipment, she said. I can't or won't. I'm having it valued Thursday. Return it after. I need options. So do I. You have savings. The words came fast. He heard them at the same moment she did. Marlene's hand tightened around the phone. Scott said, That's not what I meant. It is exactly what you meant. I'm not asking for your money. You're only deciding what I can afford to lose. That station will eat every dollar you have. Then at least it will be my mistake. He made a wounded sound. You'd rather lose it proving us wrong than help your own son. Marlene closed her eyes. No, she said. I'd rather stop teaching my son that my life is the emergency fund for his. She hung up before he could answer. The furnace made one dead metallic knock beneath the floor. Marlene sat alone until her anger cooled enough to reveal what was under it. Not triumph, not relief. Grief, mostly. And the terrible understanding that refusing to rescue someone could hurt exactly like abandoning them, even when it was the first honest help she had ever given. She did not tell Tasha about the call. By 7 the next morning, Marlene had converted the anger into usefulness. She cleaned the coffee machine, reorganized the receipts, called the furnace company twice, and placed a strip of red tape across the office floor to mark the boundary beyond which the space heater provided no benefit. Tasha arrived at 7:30, carrying a paper sack and her red heater. Biscuits, she said. You look like you slept in a ditch. I slept in a recliner. Same effect on the neck. She set the heater beneath the desk and took 2 foil-wrapped biscuits from the sack. One contained egg and sausage. The other contained only egg. Which is mine? Marlene asked. Whichever one you eat before it freezes. Marlene chose the egg. She had swallowed 2 bites before Tasha said, You called Scott. Marlene stopped chewing. He called me after, Tasha said. Why? To ask whether we really need the diagnostic tablet. What did you tell him? I told him no. I diagnose electronic systems by tasting the battery. Marlene put down the biscuit. Did he say anything else? He asked what the press kit was worth, asked what we could replace it for, asked whether Frank had maintained service records on the recovery machine. He's having the equipment valued. Sounds like he's having it priced. He says there's a difference. There usually is, until somebody needs cash. Marlene looked at her. Tasha unwrapped her biscuit. I'm a mechanic, not a monk. I hear things. His business is in trouble. I guessed. How? He brought a trailer and 2 men to protect 9 tools from depreciation. Marlene rubbed the split beside her thumbnail. He used them as security for a loan once before. Not these exact tools, some equipment from his shop. It bought him 6 months. And then I bought him another 6. Tasha ate without comment. I didn't tell Frank, Marlene said. That sounds familiar. The heater clicked off. Cold began creeping beneath the desk immediately. Marlene heard the sentence for what it was. The repair Scott made. Tasha's face became unreadable. I remember, Marlene said. Congratulations. It was a transmission service on Paul Henley's truck. Paul Henley's almost new truck. Scott didn't tighten the cooler line. He cross-threaded it. Fluid leaked on the highway. The transmission failed. Frank told Paul I had signed off on the job. Marlene looked toward the garage. Morning light entered through the raised bay door, pale and flat. She had not expected the memory to remain so complete. Paul Henley red-faced beside the counter, Frank talking loudly. Scott standing near the tire rack with his hands in his pockets. Tasha had been 26. She had worked at Voss Service for 5 months. You knew, Tasha said. Yes. The word left nowhere to hide. How? I checked the worksheets. Your initials weren't on the final inspection. They weren't on any of it. I know, and you let him say it. Yes. Tasha folded the foil around the remains of her biscuit. Her movements were small and careful. Frank docked me 2 weeks' pay. I put it back in your last check. You added it as a bonus. I didn't know how else. You knew how. You could have said Scott did it. Marlene's hands lay flat on the counter. I could have, but then Frank would have gone after him. Yes. So, you picked me. It was worse put that way because it was true in a form Marlene had never permitted herself to use. Scott's business had just lost a large job, she said. He was drinking too much. He and Frank were already fighting. And I was available. Yes. Tasha nodded once, almost to herself. I thought maybe you didn't know until later. I knew that day. That's useful. I'm sorry. Tasha looked at her. Don't do that unless you can stand me not accepting it. Marlene felt the old reflex to explain. Frank had been impossible when cornered. Scott had been fragile beneath all his noise. Tasha had been capable, employable, certain to find somewhere better. Marlene had returned the money. She had done what she could. Every explanation placed Tasha back on the scale and weighed her against the Voss family. You don't have to accept it, Marlene said. Good. If you want to leave, I'll pay the 12 weeks. That's not generosity. That was our agreement. Yes. Tasha picked up the foil and threw it away. A car rolled over the bell hose outside, producing one tired ding from the old signal in the bay. Tasha reached for her jacket. You're staying? Marlene asked. I'm looking at the car. That's not what I meant. I know. The car belonged to Walt Baines. He parked beside Pump 1 and walked in carrying a yellow envelope thickened by folds. You two open or holding a funeral? He asked. We already had one, Tasha said. Walt removed his cap. Sorry. She was making a point, Marlene said. Put your hat back on before your thoughts freeze. He returned the cap to his head and slid the envelope across the counter. Inside were $20 bills, tens, and a handwritten note dated 14 years earlier. The note listed repairs to a Ford tractor, a farm truck, and Walt's wife's Buick. At the bottom, in Frank's block printing, were the words, "Pay when corn comes in." Marlene counted the cash. $380. Corn came in 14 times, she said. Not that first year. I remember. Walt's wife had been ill. Hospital trips had emptied their checking account faster than the farm could fill it. Frank had stopped sending statements after the second month. You tried to pay this, Marlene said. Frank told you it was settled. He told me to forget it. That meant settled. It meant he didn't want to talk about it. Walt pushed the envelope back toward her. I see your lights come on, I remember. 14 years is a long time to remember a bill. Longer to remember who let you keep the truck. Marlene glanced at Tasha. Her face remained still. Walt tapped the envelope. Buy something the boys hauled off. The words were ordinary county gossip, not accusation, but Marlene felt heat rise in her face. We don't discuss family business with customers, she said. Walt looked toward the empty equipment shelf. Then don't put it on a trailer in the parking lot. He left before she could return the money. Tasha took the note from the envelope and read Frank's sentence. He could do that, she said. Yes. Make somebody feel like the world had room for them. Yes. And then turn around and make somebody else pay. Marlene met her eyes. Yes. Tasha returned the note. I hate a complicated dead man. So do I. The furnace technician arrived before lunch and discovered a failed ignition control. The repair cost $412. Marlene used Walt's envelope and added 32 from the drawer. When warm air finally breathed through the office vent, Tasha stood over it with both hands extended. Walt bought heat, she said. 14 years late. Still counts. Pump 2 received its new reader that afternoon. It approved the first card, declined the second, then approved the same card when inserted upside down. The technician frowned. That shouldn't work. Don't tell it, Tasha said. Marlene's phone remained silent. Neither son called. She checked it more often than she wanted to admit. Luis Ortega arrived shortly before closing in, a tan van with one green door. He carried the clean shop towel Marlene had left around the hub. You drove here to return a towel, she asked. It is a good towel. It came from a package of 12. Then now you have 12 again. He walked through the open bay, looking at the lift and the vacant shelves without appearing nosy. His gaze stopped at the closed bay 3 door. You do upholstery? Tasha asked. When customers pay, what do you do when they don't? Less upholstery. Tasha pointed toward the split driver's seat in an old pickup awaiting an oil change. What would that cost? Luis inspected it through the window and named a price lower than Marlene expected. You're undercharging, she said. You are sending work out to a man you met yesterday. Let us not criticize each other's business decisions. He looked toward Bay 3 again. Marlene noticed. What? Nothing. You've looked at that door 3 times? I like doors. Why that one? It is large. Tasha leaned against the workbench. His landlord cut his space in half. Luis looked betrayed. I told you that? She reads people, Marlene said. I do not like this garage. Bay 3 held the tire machine, old shelving, 2 lawn chairs, and more of Frank's saved parts than any functioning shop could justify. The roof over it no longer leaked, though a dark stain marked the concrete. Marlene unlocked the connecting door. Luis stood at the threshold. How much space? About 900 square feet if we clear it. I do not need space. Of course not. I need cheaper rent. That's what space usually becomes. He stepped inside and looked at the electrical outlets, overhead door, floor drain, and narrow back entrance. His expression remained neutral, but he measured the far wall with his eyes. You need the bay, he said. Not now? You might. Then we write a short lease. You have known me one day. I called Earl after I left. He says you pay on time and complain early. That man gossips. He also says you repaired the seat in his truck after he backed into it with a screwdriver in his pocket. He tells that story wrong. Which part? He sat on the screwdriver first. Tasha laughed from the doorway. Luis walked the perimeter once more. I would need to see the roof in rain. It's recently repaired. Then I definitely need rain. No promises, Marlene said. I'm only thinking. So am I. He left with no agreement, waving once through the van's open window. Tasha watched him turn onto the county road. You're going to rent him the bay. I'm considering it. You're humming again? Warm air. Sure. They closed at 7. Tasha took the deposit pouch while Marlene carried the trash. Halfway to the dumpster, Marlene's right knee gave a sharp warning. She caught herself against the brick wall. Tasha was beside her before the pain eased. I'm fine, Marlene said. You almost introduced your face to a trash bag. My knee slipped. Knees don't slip. People do. Marlene straightened and reached for the bag. Tasha held it away. No, you don't get to order me around because you caught me leaning. I'm not ordering you around. I'm taking out trash. I can do it. That's the disease in this family, isn't it? The word struck harder than Tasha seemed to intend. They stood beside the building in the new cold, each holding one handle of the trash bag. Finally, Tasha let go. Marlene carried it to the dumpster herself. She lifted it with both hands and pain traveled from her thumb to her shoulder. The bag landed inside. When she turned, Tasha was waiting by the door. I don't need you helpless, Tasha said. I need you here. Marlene looked past her at the station windows, glowing against the early dark. There had always been someone who needed her there. Frank, her sons, customers who paid on Friday or 14 years late. Need had kept her moving so long, she no longer knew when it became permission. All right, she said. Tasha frowned. All right what? Tomorrow, you take out the trash. It was not forgiveness, but Tasha opened the door and held it for her. The trash can was empty when Marlene arrived at 6:40. Tasha's truck stood beside Bay 1, silver frost coating its windshield. Inside, she was tightening the bolts on the waiting pickup's oil pan. "You don't start until 7:30, Marlene said. Tasha did not look up. "You don't start until 7. I own the place. I have a key." "Why?" "You gave it to me." Marlene switched on the bay lights. "That was reckless. I told you not to trust me." A fresh liner had been fitted into the office bin. The coffee was already brewing. Beside the machine sat 2 blueberry muffins with a note from Sheila Morgan. "Payment Friday. Muffins are interest." Marlene took one. "Those taste like insulation," Tasha warned. "Warm insulation." They ate in the bay while the pickup idled. Tasha listened for a leak, bent once to look beneath the engine, then handed the keys to its owner when he arrived. He paid, scheduled breaks for the following week, and left 2 business cards for his landscaping company beside the register. That was how work began to accumulate, not as a rush, but as objects left behind. A card, a phone number written on the back of a receipt, a note beneath the wiper of a locked car dropped off before dawn. By noon, Marlene had scheduled 3 oil changes, a brake inspection, and the replacement mirror on Sheila's sedan. The station was still losing money. It simply looked busier while doing it. At 2, Tasha found Marlene studying the blue operating sheet. "You're frowning at it like the numbers insulted your mother. They're impersonal. That's worse." "How far under?" "Less than Monday." "That's not what I asked. It's what I'm answering." Tasha sat on the edge of the desk. The space heater was off now that the furnace worked, but she still positioned her boots over it from habit. "We need repeat work," she said, "not people stopping in because they heard the widow unlock the doors." "I know, and we need jobs we can do with the equipment we have." "I know. You say that in a way that makes me want to explain it again." Marlene turned the sheet toward her. "I reserved the first appointment each morning for home care workers and local tradespeople. Basic service, same day when possible. Sheila is passing the number around." Tasha read the page. 6:30 drop-off. "I'll be here." "No. You were here before me today." That was spite. Spite is not a schedule. People need their cars for work. So do we. Which means we need bodies that continue functioning. My body functions. Your body lost an argument with a trash bag. Marlene reached for the sheet. Tasha held it down with one finger. "We agreed 4 days," Tasha said. "If you start taking 6:30 appointments every morning, you'll be living here. I practically lived here before. And how did that work out?" Frank's absence entered the room without invitation. Marlene removed Tasha's finger from the paper. "We'll start 2 mornings, 3 hours only. Oil, brakes, batteries, things we can promise." "Fine. No walk-ins during those hours if the schedule is full. We don't turn away stranded people. Stranded is different. How? They look stranded. That is not a system." It worked for Frank. So did unpaid labor. Tasha got off the desk. The sentence had arrived without force, almost accidentally. Neither woman touched it. Marlene wrote Tuesday and Thursday at the top of the appointment page. 3 hours, she said. Tasha nodded. That afternoon, a steady rain began. It drummed on the canopy, ran in silver lines past the office window, and found 2 places where Dario's second repair had not held. Both leaks were in Bay 3. Marlene set buckets beneath them before Luis arrived. He came through the rear door carrying an umbrella that had turned inside out. "I see the roof is honest. It's recently repaired. It is recently leaking, only in 2 places. That is almost a roof." Luis walked around the buckets. Rain marked dark circles on the concrete, well away from where he would place sewing machines or fabric. "I could build a divider here," he said. "Keep the clean work away from the garage. You'd pay for that?" "I would build it. Materials we discuss. You would need your own insurance. I have it. Utilities included for 3 months. After that, we look at actual use. 6 months, 4, 5, fine." He named a monthly rent, Marlene countered. They met in the middle, at an amount low enough to make Luis suspicious and high enough to cover nearly half the station's electric bill. "Short lease," he said. 1 year, 6 months, then month to month. 1 year protects me. 6 months protects the bay. From me? From success? Luis considered her, then smiled. "You think the garage will grow? I'm trying to." He looked toward the office. "Your sons agree?" "No." "Do they need to?" "No." Are you certain? Yes. Luis shut the umbrella. Water spilled over his shoes. Then I need a dry roof and a key. You don't get a key until you sign. You gave Tasha one. I'm learning. The rain stopped before Dario arrived, which allowed him to claim he could not locate the leaks. They're above the buckets, Marlene said. That only proves where the water landed. Tasha leaned out of bay 1. I can help him land there. Dario repaired the seams without further philosophy. On Friday morning, Sheila Morgan paid every dollar she owed, plus 14 cents. You overpaid, Marlene said. I rounded. To what? A number I liked. Sheila accepted the darker blue mirror, then brought in a clipboard containing the names of 6 other home care workers interested in early appointments. Our agency doesn't provide cars, she explained. We drive our own. If a car's in the shop, somebody misses visits or spends half their pay on a rental. We can't guarantee every repair in 3 hours, Tasha said. I know, but tell us what's wrong before 9. Give us the first chance to approve it, and don't talk to us like we've never seen an engine. I can do that. Frank could not. No, Marlene said. He could not. Sheila pointed her pen toward Tasha. You're the one who fixed my mirror. I replaced it. It no longer falls off. That is my definition of fixed. They created the first appointment list together. Tires and oil. A battery that died twice. A rattling sound one woman described as metal popcorn. Sheila left with 12 station cards and both remaining muffins. By the following week, Luis had moved in 2 sewing machines, 5 rolls of vinyl, a work table, and the refrigerator covered in takeout menus. The divider consisted of clear plastic curtains hung from a metal track, which made Bay 3 look like a medical ward for furniture. He refused help with the sewing machines, and accepted help with everything else. Tasha used the forklift to unload his work table. Marlene labeled the separate electrical breaker. Luis brought a pot of rice, chicken, and peppers for lunch, then discovered that the office had only 2 forks. I have spoons, Marlene said. This is not spoon food. Most food becomes spoon food if you're persistent. Tasha found a 3rd fork in Frank's desk drawer beside 2 tire gauges and a packet of antacid tablets expired in 2019. They ate around the desk. Luis asked no questions about Frank. Tasha discussed an upholstery repair on a delivery van. Marlene listened as their work began overlapping naturally. A mechanic noticing torn seats, an upholsterer hearing engines that knocked, each directing customers through the plastic curtain to the other. At one point, Luis rose to get salt from his refrigerator and returned with a proper chair for Marlene. The stool is fine, she said. The stool leans. So do I. Yes, in the same direction. It is too much agreement. He replaced the torn office stool with a padded chair from a dining set someone had abandoned. Marlene sat. The chair was the correct height for the desk. I am not paying for this, she said. I was going to throw it away. It has new fabric. I throw things away beautifully. Her phone rang before she could answer. Daniel. His name had not appeared since Monday. Marlene set down her fork. Tasha and Luis both became intensely interested in their food. Hello? Are you at the station? Yes, I've left 3 messages at the house. She had heard them. Each asked her to call about the property. None asked how she was. I've been working. I spoke with Scott. That was brave. He told me about his business. Marlene glanced toward Tasha, but Tasha's face revealed nothing. Did he tell you? Marlene asked. Or did you interrogate him? He asked me for advice. Did you give it? Of course. That was brave of Scott. Daniel ignored this. The situation makes it more important that we stop treating the property like a personal statement. The station is a business. A business with 1 mechanic, 1 working bay, and limited fuel service. 2 pumps now. That changes everything. Luis silently held out the salt. Marlene waved it away. Daniel continued. The convenience store company increased its preliminary range. How preliminary? They need updated environmental testing and an equipment valuation. Scott's handling the valuation. He told me. Did he tell you why? A pause. He has no right to borrow against shared equipment without consent, Daniel said. Neither do you. I'm not planning to. No. You're planning to sell the ground beneath it. I am planning to preserve an option. Marlene looked through the office window. A home care worker's sedan waited in bay 1 with the hood raised. Beyond it, Luis's green-doored van stood beneath the canopy. The place did not look preserved. It looked interrupted in the middle of becoming something. I'm not selling, she said. You haven't even heard the revised number. I don't need to. That is irresponsible. So is knowing the price of everything before you know whether it's for sale. Daniel exhaled. Mr. Price is going to stop by. Who? The company's representative. When? He's in the county today. He only wants to inspect the exterior and update photographs. No. He won't interfere with operations. No. The parking lot and canopy are visible from the road, Mom. Then he can look from the road. Daniel's voice tightened. You cannot refuse every conversation. I'm having conversations all day with people who agree with you. Marlene looked at Tasha. Tasha raised both eyebrows. You'd be surprised, Marlene said. Daniel ended the call by saying he would be in touch, a phrase that sounded borrowed from work. At 3:15, a black sedan stopped on the shoulder across County Road 9. A man in a camel-colored overcoat stepped out with a phone and began taking pictures of the station. Marlene watched him photograph the canopy, the pumps, the sidewall, and the entrance to Bay 3. He moved with the patient confidence of someone who believed distance made him polite. Louise came to stand beside her. A customer? A possibility, she said. For what? Marlene turned the cardboard sign in the window so the word open faced more squarely toward the road. For my son's future. The man lowered his phone. For a moment, Marlene thought he might return to his car. Instead, he checked traffic, crossed the county road, and walked beneath the canopy. Up close, he was younger than the coat suggested, perhaps 45, with rain-spotted glasses and mud along one trouser cuff. He stopped outside the door and waited. Marlene opened it. Mrs. Voss? Yes. Randall Price. Daniel said he told you I might look at the property. He told me you would photograph it from the road. Mr. Price glanced back toward the shoulder. I realized that looked worse. It looked dangerous. That too? He put his phone in his pocket. I don't want to cause a problem. You want to buy a gas station without causing a problem? We would close the purchase before causing most of them. Louise made a small sound behind her. It might have been a laugh disguised as a cough. Marlene stepped aside enough for Mr. Price to enter the office, but not enough to invite him farther. He wiped his shoes on the mat without being asked. I understand your sons are exploring a sale, he said. My sons are exploring my patience. Yes? Daniel mentioned there were differing views. That is how administrators describe being told no. Mr. Price looked through the interior window into Bay 1. Tasha had the home care worker's sedan connected to the old manual scanner, which displayed a string of numbers like an unsuccessful lottery ticket. I was told operations had ceased, he said. They resumed. Recently? Last Monday. And you intend to continue? Yes. He nodded, accepting the answer more easily than either of her sons had. Then I should clarify that I'm not here to pressure you. My company evaluates sites. Sometimes we make offers, sometimes owners decline. What would you build? A convenience store, new fuel canopy, diesel lanes possibly. The county will require traffic review. The garage, removed, the office. Everything down to the slab, most likely, depending on the tank work. He spoke without relish. That made the words cleaner and somehow crueler. Marlene imagined the office chair gone, Frank's white tool outlines gone, Bay 3's plastic divider, and Luis's bright rolls of vinyl gone. She imagined rows of refrigerated drinks humming where she had kept the account notebook. The company would light the lot so brightly that darkness itself would seem like poor management. How many people would work here, she asked. 6 to 8 across shifts, not all at once. Mechanics? No. People who know customers' names? Mr. Price hesitated. Some would, eventually. Tasha entered carrying a printed diagnostic code. Mass airflow sensor, she told Marlene. Then she noticed the visitor. You buying coffee or history? Neither today, Mr. Price said. He's buying the ground, Marlene said. Ah, history comes free. Mr. Price removed his glasses and cleaned them with a folded cloth. Daniel suggested a meeting with the family. If you're willing, I can explain the updated range and answer questions. No commitment. Marlene could refuse again. Daniel would arrange another conversation in another form. Scott would use each refusal as evidence that she was afraid of the number. When? Sunday morning? We're closed Sunday. That was the idea? Tasha handed Marlene the diagnostic page. Charge him for parking, Mr. Price smiled. I'll move my car. You're on the county shoulder, then I'll pay the county. After he left, Marlene placed the diagnostic page beside the register. Luis remained near the coffee machine. You will meet him? With Daniel and Scott. You will sell? No. Then why meet? Because my sons think the right number will make me someone else. Tasha leaned against the counter. Don't let them call it a family meeting. What should they call it? An ambush with coffee. On Sunday, Daniel arrived first with a leather folder under his arm. Marlene had set 5 chairs in the office. Frank's old desk chair, the padded dining chair Luis had given her, 2 plastic waiting room chairs, and the torn stool. She left the stool nearest the door. Daniel noticed. You're leasing part of the garage now? He asked. Bay 3. To the upholstery man. Luis, does your insurance cover a second business? Yes. Separate electrical use? We're measuring it. Fire code? Daniel, he stopped. Marlene pointed to the coffee. It's fresh. He poured a cup and added powdered creamer until the surface turned gray. He had drunk it that way since college. Frank used to say Daniel liked a little coffee with his milk. You look tired, Daniel said. You always say that. Because you always look tired. That's a pleasant family tradition. He sat in Frank's chair, realized which one it was, and moved to a plastic seat instead. Scott arrived 10 minutes late in the same pickup, but without the trailer. The magnetic sign had been removed from the door, leaving a clean rectangle in the faded paint. He did not hug Marlene. Where's Tasha? He asked. Home? And the renter? Also not invited to the family meeting. Scott glanced at the torn stool, then remained standing. Mr. Price arrived exactly at 9. He brought printed aerial photographs, a legal pad, and no false enthusiasm. Marlene appreciated him for that. He explained the revised range. It was higher than the first offer, though not by as much as Scott's expression suggested he had expected. Environmental testing could change it. Demolition costs could change it. Corporate approval could change it. The number was enough to make Marlene picture debts erased, savings restored, roofs made someone else's problem. It was not enough to replace what would be gone. Daniel asked about the review timeline. Scott asked whether equipment could be excluded. Mr. Price answered both. No one asked Marlene anything for 12 minutes. She watched Scott bounce one knee. Daniel took notes with a black pen, his handwriting as controlled as ever. They seemed younger at the station, not because their faces changed, but because their old positions returned. Daniel gathered facts. Scott waited for rescue. Their father's empty chair supervised them all. Mr. Price finally turned to her. What concerns would you want addressed, Mrs. Voss? I'm not selling. Scott's knee stopped. Daniel capped his pen. Can we finish hearing the terms? We heard them. We heard a preliminary range. It's a respectable offer, Mr. Price said. But Mrs. Voss is correct. You have the essential information. Scott looked at him. Could you give us a minute? Of course. Mr. Price gathered his coat and stepped outside. Through the window, Marlene watched him walk to the edge of the lot and call someone. Daniel placed his folder on the desk. Why agree to this meeting if you had no intention of considering it? I considered it. For how long? 12 minutes. That is not good faith. I listened to the price, the conditions, and what he would build. You knew you'd say no before he arrived. I knew you'd say yes. Scott dragged a hand over his face. Mom, this isn't about a convenience store being ugly. I didn't say it was. You're treating the offer like an insult. No. I'm treating it like an offer. Then negotiate. I don't want more money. Daniel stared at her. Everyone wants more money. For what? Security. I have a house. I have savings. You are spending the savings. Some of them. On a business with no proven revenue. It has revenue, not profit, not yet. Scott walked to the interior window. Beyond it, Bay 1 stood clean and empty. Luis's plastic divider showed faintly through the glass of the connecting door. You keep acting like this is only yours, he said. The property is mine. We know. You've made that very clear. Then what are we discussing? Dad built this place for the family. Marlene felt something in her settle. No, she said. Your father built it because he hated working for Gus Remley and believed he could run a shop better. We became the family that kept it alive. You know what I mean. I know what you remember. Scott turned. I worked here. You did. So did Daniel. Daniel's mouth tightened, perhaps at being included in a claim he did not entirely want. You swept bays, Marlene said. You changed oil. You complained. You also learned things here. All of that is true. And you're saying it means nothing? I'm saying it does not mean more than what I did. Nobody answered. Marlene rested her hands on the desk. I answered every tow call at night because your father slept through the phone. I did payroll at the kitchen table. I drove parts through snow. I kept notes on customers because Frank could remember every engine he touched and forget who needed 3 extra days to pay. When you were both angry with him, I stood between you. When he was angry with you, I stood there too. When Scott's business was in trouble, I paid suppliers. When Daniel refused to come home one Christmas because Frank insulted his job, I told each of you the other one was sick. Daniel looked at her. You told me Dad had the flu. He had pride. Scott gave a short laugh, then covered it with his hand. Marlene continued. The town called it Frank's Station. You called it Dad's Station. Most days, I called it work. Now that the work can become a check, you've decided it belongs to the family. That isn't fair, Daniel said. No, it wasn't. His face changed. Scott walked away from the window. What do you want us to say? That nobody noticed you enough? Fine, we didn't. Dad didn't. Does that mean you get to burn through everything now? I am not burning anything. You hired the woman Dad fired. She quit. Same difference. No, Marlene said. Not to Tasha. Scott looked toward Bay 1 again. Daniel folded his hands. This station hurt all of us. You seem to believe reopening it corrects that. No. Reopening it gives me work I choose. It's still Dad's life. It was mine too. But he is everywhere in this place. The words escaped Daniel with more force than anything else he had said. He looked toward the desk chair he had refused to sit in. Marlene saw it then, not disgust, not entirely. Fear. Daniel had spent 30 years leaving the station, and one dead man remained strong enough to occupy every room. You don't have to come here, she said more gently. That's convenient. It's permission. I didn't ask for it. No, you don't ask for much. Daniel picked up his folder. Scott blocked the office door. We are not done. I am, Marlene said. Tell Mr. Price to give us 30 days. No, 2 weeks. No, a week then. Let the appraisals come back. See what the equipment and property together are actually worth. I know what they're worth to me. Scott's face reddened. Do you know what my truck was worth? The question confused her. He looked through the window toward the empty space beside Daniel's SUV, as if his own pickup had already vanished. I have to sell it, he said. The bank won't take shared equipment without signatures. Riverside still hasn't paid. I can finish the job if I release the cabinets, and I can't release the cabinets unless I pay Brunswick. Marlene said nothing. I'm not asking you for money, he added. It sounded practiced. Daniel looked at him. We discussed bridge financing. You discussed it. I listened. Your receivables justify. My receivables are promises from people who've stopped answering. Daniel's administrator voice disappeared. Why didn't you tell me that? Because you'd use that tone. What tone? That one. They faced each other, both suddenly too old for the roles they had resumed. Scott turned back to Marlene. The sale would fix this. It would fix your debt. It would help all of us. No. It would make all of us responsible for the choices that created it. He flinched. Marlene's voice softened, though the answer did not. Sell the truck. Call Janice yourself. Finish the jobs you can finish. Stop ordering ahead to look bigger than you are. You make that sound simple. No, I make it sound yours. Outside, mister. Price ended his call. Daniel closed the folder. Scott stepped away from the door. When Mr. Price returned, Marlene met him beneath the canopy. You have my answer, she said. He nodded. I do. My sons may contact you again. They probably will. The answer will still be no. Mr. Price put on his glasses. For what it's worth, Mrs. Voss, I don't think they're only chasing money. I know. That can make it harder. I know that too. He crossed the lot and drove away. Daniel left without coffee. Scott remained beside his pickup, staring at the clean rectangle where his company sign had been. Marlene locked the office door behind the meeting and turned toward them. For once, neither son followed her inside. Scott stayed beside his pickup after Daniel drove away. He scraped one boot over a stain in the pavement, then looked toward the road where Mr. Price's sedan had disappeared. I thought you'd at least counter, he said. I told you I wouldn't sell. People say that before they hear a number. I heard it. You didn't even blink. I blinked several times. He gave her a tired look. You know what I mean. Marlene put the station key into her coat pocket. It was more money than I expected. That seemed to matter to him. And I still don't want it. Scott walked to his truck and rested both hands on the tailgate. Without the company sign, it looked less like a business vehicle than something he had borrowed. I'm gonna lose Riverside, he said. Maybe. You're not supposed to agree. What should I say? That they'll pay. That I'll figure it out. Will that make either thing happen? No. He turned toward her. The anger had drained from his face, leaving him older. I don't know how to get smaller. Marlene understood. Frank had understood growth, but considered retreat a moral failure. He would work 12 hours to avoid admitting a job was too large, then blame the world for requiring 13. Start with the truck, she said. Scott nodded once. I listed it yesterday. She wanted to ask the price, the mileage, what he would drive instead. She wanted to offer her Buick on days she worked at the station. Instead, she said, Janice will work with you if you call before she has to call again. She likes you better. She hears from me. He looked down at the tailgate. I'll return some of the equipment. Some? The bank won't use it, and the valuation came in lower than I thought. But I still want everything accounted for. It is accounted for. By you. Yes. He almost smiled. That's the problem, isn't it? No, it's the change. He left without coming inside. Monday morning, the wheel-bearing press kit sat in front of Bay 1. Scott had placed it there before dawn, wrapped in a blue tarp and secured with a bungee cord. Beside it were the battery tester and the diagnostic tablet. No note. Tasha checked each serial number against Marlene's yellow pad. Transmission jack's still gone, she said. So is the recovery machine. He can keep the jack for now. I want the recovery machine before summer. It's November. I plan ahead. Marlene carried the diagnostic tablet inside. It still held the customer file Tasha had mentioned. The first entry was Sheila's sedan. The second was Greg Larkin's van. You were right, she said. Tasha looked suspicious. About what? We had one more customer than Scott thought. Careful. Admitting I'm right creates expectations. The return tools changed the week. Tasha completed a wheel bearing without sending Marlene across town. They diagnosed a contractor's van built after 2008. The battery tester showed that a home care worker needed a corroded cable, not the new alternator another shop had suggested. The money arrived in small amounts and left in larger ones. Luis paid his first rent on a Tuesday, 6 days before it was due. He handed Marlene an envelope at lunch, watched her count it, and pretended not to watch her reaction. You overpaid by $40, she said, for electricity. We aren't measuring that until next month. I used the work lights. They were already there. And the heater. The roof leaked. Not now. You're a difficult tenant. You are a dangerous landlord. You charge less when criticized. She returned 2 20s. He accepted one and put the other beneath the sugar bowl. Marlene found it after he left and slipped it into the pocket of his jacket hanging in Bay 3. The next day he found it and repaired the torn stool. They continued this way without naming the exchange. Luis brought lunch and claimed he had made too much. Marlene ordered extra shop towels and claimed they came only by the case. Tasha watched them with the expression of someone observing 2 people assemble furniture without instructions. You could just say thank you, she told Marlene. I do. You say, you didn't have to. That is thank you's hostile cousin. What do you say? I say, but put it over there. That explains your rich personal life. Tasha looked at her over a mug of coffee. Glass house, Marlene. The days shortened. The red canopy lights began glowing before the final appointment left. Frost whitened the roof in the mornings, and customers stamped their boots on the mat before coming inside. Marlene began arriving at 6 on appointment days and leaving after 8. She told herself the long hours were temporary. Temporary had carried much of her life on its back. One evening, she sat in Luis's padded chair to finish a fuel reconciliation and woke to the sound of the front door rattling. She had slept nearly an hour. Tasha stood outside with both hands cupped around her eyes, peering through the glass. Marlene unlocked the door. You left your phone on the counter, Tasha said. I called 6 times. I was working. You were dead in a chair. I was asleep. I had to come back to find out. You went home? I made it halfway. Marlene reached for her phone. 6 missed calls from Tasha, 1 from Luis, none from either son. I'm fine, she said. Tasha walked past her and took the blue operating sheet off the desk. What are you doing? Finding out whether this place can afford another person. It can't. Then it can afford shorter hours. We have bookings. Not after 6. People come after work. Then we open later. That hurts fuel sales. You sell $27 in fuel between 6 and 7 on an average night. Marlene frowned. How do you know? I read the sheets. You criticize the sheets. I criticize everything I read. Marlene took them back. We need the revenue. We need an owner who doesn't die during reconciliation. I was asleep. Tasha lowered her voice. I know. I was scared before I knew. The admission took the fight out of the room. Marlene returned to the chair. The station was dark beyond the office window, its familiar equipment reduced to shadows. Frank had fallen asleep there countless times. She had draped his coat over him, finished the deposits, and driven them home when he woke. Nobody had called it dangerous. They had called him hardworking. I can close at 6 on Wednesdays, she said, and Mondays, 6:30, 6. Fine. Tasha nodded. And you take Thursday afternoon off. I work Thursday mornings. Then you'll already be halfway to leaving. You don't get to schedule the owner. Someone has to. Marlene looked at the missed calls on her phone. You're very comfortable here for someone who hasn't forgiven me. Tasha's face closed slightly. Those are separate things. Are they? Yes. Good. Tasha frowned. Why is that good? Because I don't want you staying out of forgiveness. They locked up together. Scott called the following Friday at 4 in the afternoon. I sold the truck, he said. Marlene held the phone between shoulder and ear while totaling a brake job. All right, that's it. What would you like? I don't know. A lecture, maybe. You sold it. The lecture would be late. I need a ride from the dealership. Her pencil stopped. I can call someone else, he added immediately. No. What time? He sounded annoyed by his own relief. 5:30? Tasha stayed to close. Marlene drove her Buick to the dealership and found Scott beside the service entrance with a cardboard box at his feet. His work jackets filled the box, along with a travel mug, a tape measure, and the magnetic company signs. The truck was already gone from the lot. That was quick, she said. They had a buyer. Did you get enough? Enough for Brunswick and 2 payrolls. Not Riverside. I'm negotiating with them. He put the box in her back seat and sat beside her. Marlene drove. Scott watched dealerships and restaurants pass, his hands empty in his lap. At the first red light, he said, I used to think the truck made clients trust me. Did it? Some. Did your kitchens fall apart without it? No. Then perhaps they were trusting the wrong thing. He glanced at her. That almost sounded kind. It was. They stopped at a diner on the edge of town. Scott protested that he needed to get home, then ordered meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and pie. Marlene ordered coffee. You're not eating, he asked. I had Luis's chicken. The renter cooks for you? He cooks for himself near me. Scott broke a dinner roll. Daniel thinks there's something wrong with him. Luis, Mr. Price. Why? He didn't push. Daniel is suspicious of people who accept no. Scott smiled despite himself. Then he looked down at his plate. I called Janice, he said. I told her everything. How bad? Bad enough. What did she say? She put me on a payment schedule and released only the cabinet fronts I need to finish the current section. If I don't pay Friday, nothing else moves. That sounds fair. It feels humiliating. Those often travel together. He ate a forkful of potatoes. I thought you'd offer. I wanted to. Why didn't you? Because you would have taken it. His eyes lifted. I'm not criticizing you, she said. You need money. I have some. That used to be the whole conversation. And now I'm trying to have the part afterward. Scott leaned back. Where I learn a lesson? No. Where I stop choosing your lesson for you. He was quiet for a long moment. You made it easy, he said. Marlene felt the words enter gently and cut anyway. Yes. Dad made everything feel like a test. With you, there was always another chance. I wanted home to feel safe. It did. Safe isn't supposed to mean without consequences. No. Scott looked toward the window. But it was nice. Marlene laughed softly. Yes, it was. She paid for the coffee. Scott paid for his dinner, though she saw him calculate the tip twice. On the drive back, he asked about the station without contempt. How many appointments? Whether the fuel margin was enough? Whether Luis's rent covered Bay 3's share of utilities? Marlene answered without making success larger than it was. "We're still short," she said, "but less short. You sound proud." "I am." He looked at her. "That's strange." "What is?" "I don't think I've heard you say that about something you did." She kept her eyes on the road. At his house, Scott took the cardboard box from the back seat. "The transmission jack's in my warehouse," he said. "I'll bring it Monday, thank you. I may need to sell the recovery machine. Then we discuss it first." He nodded. Before closing the door, he said, "I'm still angry you rejected the offer." "I know, and I still think the station is a mistake. I know that too. But the truck was mine?" "Yes." He stood beneath the porch light, holding the box of everything that had once made him look successful. Marlene waited until he unlocked his door before driving away. It was the kind of care she could give without erasing what came next. When she reached the station, Tasha and Luis were outside beneath the canopy. Tasha held a weather radio. Luis held a pot of soup. "Why are you both still here?" Marlene asked. Tasha turned up the volume. The forecast warned of freezing rain by the end of the following week. Heavy ice possible across the county, with prolonged power interruptions. Luis lifted the pot. "We were deciding whether soup counts as emergency equipment." "It depends," Marlene said. "What kind?" "Bean." "Then no." Tasha clicked off the radio. "Before you decide we are staying open through an ice storm, remember the chair. I haven't decided anything." "You're humming." Marlene looked at the dark road, the canopy lights, and the two working pumps. "I'm cold," she said. Neither of them believed her. The decision began with the generator. Greg Larkin called Monday morning to say a remodeling site had been postponed and a Tobel 20-kilowatt unit was sitting unused behind his shop. "You said you might need backup power," he told Marlene. "I said that to Sheila. She told me. Sheila tells nurses, she tells everybody. You want it or not, how much?" Greg named a daily rate lower than the rental yard and high enough to bruise the blue operating sheet. "For how many days?" Marlene asked. "Storm comes Thursday. Pick it up Wednesday, return Saturday if roads are clear." "What if the roads aren't clear?" "Then I assume you stole my generator during a natural disaster." "We'll need that in writing," he laughed. "I'll bring it over." Tasha heard the arrangement from beneath a sedan where she was checking an exhaust rattle. "We are not becoming an emergency shelter," she said. "We're keeping one pump in the office running. We don't have cots. I don't intend to sleep here." Tasha rolled out. That was almost convincing. Marlene wrote the generator cost on the sheet. Tasha stood and wiped her hands. "If the ice gets bad, we close." "Yes." "You said that too fast." "I'm capable of closing." "You reopened a dead station against the wishes of your entire family." "That was different." "How?" "It wasn't icy." Tasha took the pencil from her and wrote 3 conditions beneath the expense. No road calls after freezing rain. No repairs outside. Close if county pulls plows. "You sign?" she said. "This is my operating sheet." "That's why your signature will fit nicely." Marlene signed. Tasha added, "Owner does not override mechanic on safety." "I am not signing that. Then I'm taking the generator home. It belongs to Greg." "Good. He has heat." Marlene signed the second line. They prepared without pretending the station could save everyone. Hensley topped off the fuel lease before the weather changed. Tasha charged 4 jump packs and tested the battery backups on the payment system. Luis moved his fabric rolls away from the exterior wall and stocked his refrigerator with bottled water, soup, and enough food for 6 adults. "Why 6?" Marlene asked. "It was cheaper by the case." "That is not how soup works. It does at the warehouse store." Marlene ordered coffee, filters, hand warmers, windshield fluid, and salt for the walkways. The shelves looked fuller than the bank account felt. The transmission jack arrived Tuesday in the back of a white cargo van, with the ghost of another company's lettering on its side. Scott parked near Bay 1 and opened the rear doors. "I borrowed this from Ray Holcomb," he said. "The van, not the jack." Tasha brought out a rolling dolly. "I was about to accuse you of stealing both. Wouldn't be the first time you accuse me of something." The words came out with a crooked smile, an attempt at the old kind of joking. Tasha stopped. Scott's smile disappeared. Marlene stood inside the office with the coffee pot in her hand. Neither of them looked at her, but her presence filled the bay anyway. Scott lowered one end of the jack onto the dolly. That was a bad way to say it. "Yes," Tasha said. I know what you meant the other day, about mistakes costing somebody else. Tasha held the dolly steady. Do you? The Henley truck. Marlene set down the coffee pot. Scott closed the van doors. I cross-threaded the cooler fitting. I knew it didn't feel right. I should have stopped, but Dad had been writing me all morning about how long the job was taking. So, you sent it out. Yes. And when it failed, I told him I'd done the service. He told me to keep quiet. Tasha's fingers tightened around the dolly handle. That is not what happened. Scott frowned. You told him after he blamed me. You stood in this bay while he said I hadn't checked your work. You let him take my pay. I didn't know he docked you. You knew he charged the repair against my hours. I didn't. You could have asked. Scott looked toward the floor. I didn't ask a lot of questions then. No. Questions might have produced answers. Marlene's throat tightened. This was the place where she used to intervene. She could tell Tasha that Scott was trying. She could tell Scott that Tasha had a right to be angry. She could turn the jagged conversation into something smooth enough for everyone to hold. She stayed beside the coffee. Scott looked at Tasha. I'm sorry. Your mother already tried that. I'm not asking you to forgive me. Good. I'm saying I did it. 12 years late. Yes. What do you want? He considered. To return the jack. Tasha stared at him, then released the dolly. Put it beside the lift. They moved it together. They did not speak again until the jack was upright and locked in place. Scott wiped dust from his sleeve. You expecting trouble from the storm? Weather generally refuses appointments, Tasha said. I have 2 tarps and a propane heater you can use. No propane inside. I know. Do you? He accepted that. I can bring the tarps. Marlene poured 3 cups of coffee. Tasha took hers. Scott did not. At the office door, he turned to Marlene. Brunswick released the next section. Riverside paid half of what they owed. That's good. It's not fixed. I didn't say it was. I'm taking 2 smaller jobs after this. No custom cabinets until the account's current. That sounds sensible. It feels like failure. Those travel together too. He laughed despite himself. I walked into that. Yes. Scott glanced toward Tasha. I'll bring the tarps Wednesday. He did. Daniel called that evening while Marlene was at home moving Frank's slippers from beneath the recliner. She had picked them up, intending to put them in the donation box. Instead, she stood in the living room, holding one in each hand, while his recorded voice filled the answering machine. Mom, the county advisory says freezing rain could be significant. Call me when you get this, Marlene answered before he could leave another instruction. I'm here. You're screening calls now? I was carrying shoes. Whose? Your father's. The question seemed to embarrass him. Oh, I'm donating them. Okay. She placed the slippers in a paper grocery bag. They landed heel to heel. Daniel said, Are you going to the station Thursday? Yes. No. You've caught the family habit. I'm serious. They're predicting half an inch of ice. We rented a generator. That is the opposite of reassuring. We have a safety plan. Who is we? Tasha, Luis, and me, the mechanic and the upholsterer. You manage hospitals with accountants. I manage them inside buildings designed for emergencies. Luis has soup. Marlene? She sat in Frank's chair. It tilted her toward the armrest. Daniel lowered his voice. Stay home. Or come up here Wednesday night. I'll drive down and get you. No. Why? I'm working. This is exactly what Dad would have said. He would have said the fools on television couldn't predict weather and then driven the tow truck into a ditch. And you think you're different? Yes. How? I listened to Tasha. Daniel was silent. Marlene rubbed the worn leather of the chair arm. If the roads become unsafe, I won't drive. If the county pulls the plows, we close. No roadside calls after the freezing rain starts. What if power goes out at the house? The pipes are drained in the station's unused washroom. I can stay there if I can't get home. That is not a plan. It is several plans. You could stay with me and not need any of them. The hurt beneath his frustration surprised her. This isn't choosing the station over you, she said. It keeps looking that way. I asked you when you called without trying to manage me. You heard that as a reason to stop calling. You told me I treated you like a responsibility. You did. And now, what am I supposed to ask? Marlene looked toward the grocery bag containing Frank's slippers. Ask whether I'm frightened. Daniel's breath caught softly. Are you? He asked. Yes. It was the first answer he had not expected. So, don't go. I can be frightened and still go. Then what good is asking? It means you know. The line stayed quiet. Daniel had always believed information should lead to action. Perhaps that was why he collected so much of it. Call me Thursday morning, he said. All right? And Thursday night. If I can. No. Promise. Marlene smiled faintly. You're trying the same door with a different key. Please. She looked at the slippers. All right, she said. I promise to call if conditions allow. That is administrator language. I learned from you. He almost laughed. Be careful, you too. After hanging up, Marlene carried the grocery bag to the front hall. She did not place it with the donations. Not yet. Wednesday brought hard blue sky and a wind that found every gap around the station windows. Greg delivered the generator. Tasha connected it through a transfer switch installed by an electrician she trusted, and then made him test the setup twice. One fuel pump, office lights, register, coffee machine, furnace. Not the lifts, not the compressor, not Louise's industrial sewing machine. So, in an outage, Louise said, my business becomes soup. Emergency equipment, Marlene said. He handed her a key to his van. If you need to leave and your Buick will not start, take it. I'm not driving a tan van with a green door. It builds character. I have enough. Then give some back. They stood near Bay 3 while Tasha tested the generator under load. The engine rattled outside. The office lights dimmed, then steadied. Luis looked at Marlene's hands. You bought warmer gloves? Yes. Those are Frank's. They fit. They have no fingers. I need fingers to count money. You need fingers to keep. He went into his workspace and returned with a pair of lined leather gloves. They were slightly too large. I am not accepting these. They belong to a customer who never returned. You stole them. I protected them from depreciation. Marlene laughed and put them in her coat pocket. Thursday began with rain so fine it hung in the canopy lights like mist. At 6:30, the pavement was only wet. By 8, a clear skin had formed along the edge of the lot. Tasha scattered salt. Luis filled the coffee urn. Marlene called Daniel and told him conditions were manageable. At 9:15, Sheila arrived for a battery appointment and warned them that 2 county roads were already slick. At 10, Greg's generator coughed once in the cold and recovered. At 11, the power flickered. The card readers reset. The furnace stopped, then restarted. Across the road, lights went out in 3 houses and did not return. Tasha stood at the bay door, watching ice gather on the utility lines. We close repairs at noon, she said. Marlene looked at the appointment board. We have 1 oil change at 12:30. Call him. Marlene signed beside Tasha's safety rule a second time, then called. By noon, branches had begun bending toward the road. The rain made no sound until it struck something already frozen. Luis locked Bay 3 and brought his soup into the office. Tasha lowered the first bay door. Marlene turned the cardboard sign halfway, leaving open visible from one direction and closed from the other. What does that mean? Tasha asked. It means fuel and coffee, if people can get here safely. That is not a real sign. It is now. Outside, a pickup slid past the entrance, corrected, and disappeared into the gray. A second set of headlights approached more slowly and turned beneath the red canopy. The pickup stopped beside Pump 1. A man in a delivery company jacket climbed out and immediately slid into the side of his truck. He caught the mirror, regained his footing, and shouted something the ice did not seem to take personally. Tasha opened the office door. Walk like you're 90. My grandmother would hit you for saying that. Walk like your grandmother, then. He shuffled inside. Ice glazed his shoulders and beard. Rear tires losing air, he said. I felt it start pulling about a mile back. No outside repairs, Tasha said. I can pull into the bay. Slowly. The station power went out before he reached his truck. Everything stopped at once. Furnace, coffee machine, office lights. Even the old clock above the register fell silent. Through the window, the red canopy lights vanished, leaving the pickup's headlights suspended in gray rain. Luis turned on a battery lantern. Marlene heard the generator start outside. It coughed, caught, and settled into a heavy rhythm. 10 seconds later, the office lights returned. The furnace took longer. Pump 1's display flashed a row of 8s, cleared, then asked for payment. Tasha looked at Marlene. 1 pump, office heat. just as tested. You sound surprised. I'm pleased. Don't get used to it. They guided the delivery truck into Bay 1. The tire had picked up a screw, but the puncture sat in the tread and could be repaired safely. Tasha raised only one side with a floor jack. The lift remained dead under generator power. Marlene charged him for the repair and coffee. Luis gave him soup without charge. I can pay, the man said. You are paying for the tire, Luis told him. The soup is seeking purpose. Within an hour, 4 more vehicles stopped. A nursing assistant bought fuel because her usual station was dark. An electrician needed a jump after stopping to help someone on the shoulder. A restaurant manager came in for windshield fluid and remained because a branch fell across the road behind him. Nobody was dramatic. They were wet, cold, irritated adults making calls that did not connect and recalculating routes that no longer existed. Marlene wrote every sale by hand when the card reader began dropping its connection. Cash went into the register. Card numbers did not. She used the old carbon receipt book and told regular customers she would call them when the system returned. Tasha glanced at the growing stack. Immediate payment. The weather made an amendment. Of course it did. Luis heated soup on a single electric burner plugged into the office circuit. When the generator strained, Tasha unplugged the coffee machine until the burner clicked off. By 2, there were 7 people in the office and waiting area. Steam rose from coats hung over chair backs. The padded chair Luis had brought went to a woman whose knee replacement ached in the cold. Marlene sat on the repaired stool, which no longer leaned. She did not lift tires. She did not spread salt. Each time she started toward the door, Tasha said her name without looking up. Marlene stayed behind the counter. It was harder than work. She directed cars one at a time beneath the canopy, kept the pump line from blocking the road, found dry gloves in the supply cabinet, and called the county number for updates. When an older man asked whether Voss Service still had a tow truck, she said no and helped him reach a company operating from the other side of town. Frank would have gone after him. The thought came without pride. Frank would have tied chains to the truck, ignored the glaze forming on the road, and returned to Cheers, or not returned until morning. Marlene had once called that courage because the alternative was admitting he frightened her. She gave the man the tow company's number and told him to remain where he was. At 3:10, the county pulled its plows from 2 rural routes. Tasha came into the office with ice in her hair. That triggers the rule. We're already here. It triggers closed. Marlene looked at the half-turned sign. Fuel customers continued arriving from the east, where power was out across several miles. Sending them farther would put them back on the road. Keeping the station open might bring more. We close the bay, she said. Fuel only for people already traveling. Nobody leaves here on our advice. Tasha folded her arms. No repairs outside, Marlene continued. No road calls. Doors lock if the lot ice is faster than we can salt it. Luis stirred the soup. And everyone who argues eats bean. Tasha considered the conditions. Turn the sign. Marlene turned it fully to closed. They kept the canopy lights on. People understood. At 4, Greg arrived in his plumbing van with 2 diesel cans for the generator. He had chains on his rear tires and ice thick across the hood. You were supposed to stay home, Marlene said. It's my generator. You rented it. Not enough to buy another one. He refueled it while Tasha watched. Then he stayed to salt the walkway. At 5, the restaurant manager used a battery saw from his trunk to cut the fallen branch into pieces small enough to drag off the road. The electrician checked the generator connection. Sheila returned with 2 blankets from her agency office and scolded Marlene for not wearing both gloves Luis had given her. The station did not save anyone. It gave people a lit place to stop solving the storm alone. Marlene lost track of her phone. She remembered at 6:30 when the office had emptied enough for her to see the counter. The phone lay beneath the carbon receipt book. 9 missed calls, 7 from Daniel, 2 from Scott. She called Daniel first. The call went directly to voicemail. I'm at the station, she said. We have power from the generator. I'm safe. The county pulled some plows, so don't drive down. I mean that. She called Scott. His phone rang once, then disconnected. The cellular signal faded entirely a few minutes later. You promised to call him, Tasha said. I called. You called late. I misplaced the phone. You were sitting 4 feet from it. There were people. Tasha did not answer. Her disapproval needed no assistance. Outside, ice thickened along the canopy supports. The red light turned it the color of hard candy. The road beyond the lot was almost empty. Marlene began sorting the handwritten charges into the old customer notebook. Sheila Morgan. Greg Larkin. 2 names she did not know. Beside each, she wrote a phone number, vehicle, amount, and circumstance. The old pages carried the same arrangement in her handwriting. Names, dates, promises. Paid Friday. Waiting on pension. Furnace first. Frank approved. Beneath some entries, Frank had drawn heavy lines after payment. Beneath others, Marlene had added quiet notes no customer ever saw. Daniel's headlights appeared shortly before 8. His silver SUV crawled into the lot with hazard lights blinking. Ice coated the grill. When he stepped out, both feet slid, and he caught himself on the door. Marlene's relief arrived tangled with fury. She met him inside. "What are you doing here? I told you not to drive. You didn't answer for 3 hours. I left a message, after I was already south of Medina. You should have turned around. The interstate was clear until the last 40 miles. That is not an answer. It is exactly the answer you give." Water ran from his coat onto the mat. His glasses fogged, hiding his eyes. Marlene took them from him and dried them with a clean coffee filter because all the towels were wet. "You could have been killed," she said. "So could you." "I was inside. I didn't know that." She handed his glasses back. He put them on and looked around. Greg slept in a waiting room chair with his cap over his face. The electrician sat on an overturned bucket, charging his phone from an outlet. Luis ladled soup into a paper cup for a woman waiting for road conditions to improve. Tasha stood in Bay 1 beside a sedan with a loose battery cable, explaining why she would not send the driver out until the salt truck passed. Daniel stared as if he had entered the wrong building. "You're repairing cars?" he asked. "One battery connection," Marlene said. "Inside only. The county pulled plows. We closed. The canopy lights are on. For people already on the road. That's open. The sign says, closed." "What does the insurance say?" Marlene took his wet coat. "Hello, Daniel." His anger broke around the greeting. "Hello, Mom." Luis handed him soup. "You are the administrator." Daniel looked at the cup. "Who are you?" "The upholsterer." Daniel accepted the soup. For the next hour, he tried to become useful without asking permission. He moved wet coats away from the heater. He found an extension cord and immediately asked Tasha whether it could handle the load. He organized the handwritten charges into piles until Marlene moved them back. "Those are arranged by account," she said. "They were in no order. They were in my order." He looked at the notebook. The page lay open to Sheila's name. Beneath the current charge were older entries stretching back 7 years. Daniel turned one page, then another. "Why are there notes about people's furnaces?" "So, I knew what they could pay. Dad let all these accounts run?" "Some." "This is your handwriting?" "Yes." He pulled one of the old invoice books from the keep box Daniel himself had packed. He opened it, then another. Marlene watched him find her blue figures in margin after margin. Payroll calculations, supplier dates, customer arrangements. Frank's block letters appeared mostly on repair descriptions and totals. Daniel sat in the desk chair without noticing it was Frank's. "You did the books. I did most things that involved a telephone or a pencil. He told me you helped with receipts. I did. This isn't helping." "No." The generator rattled outside. Ice tapped the window. Daniel ran one finger down an entry from 1999. "Why didn't you ever say? To whom? To us. You were here. I was sweeping floors. You were angry. At him. Yes." Daniel closed the invoice book. "I hated this place. I know. I thought every hour he spent here was an hour he chose not to be with us. Then he expected Scott and me to love it because he did. He expected you to prove you were his sons. And when I went into hospital administration, he called me a professional meeting attender. He was proud of you." "No, you said he was." Marlene felt the old lie return, not as memory, but as something still alive between them. "Yes," she said, "I said that. Was he?" "Sometimes." He didn't know what to do with pride that didn't look like himself. Daniel's face tightened. "So, you translated him?" "For years. You made him easier to love." "I tried. And now you've reopened this place and expected me to separate you from him?" "No. I expected you to ask." "I couldn't." He looked around the office. "If this was yours too, then you chose it too." There it was, the question beneath every argument. Marlene sat opposite him on the repaired stool. I chose some of it, she said. I chose Frank. I chose the work more often than I should have. I chose peace when honesty would have cost us something. I let him take credit because correcting people embarrassed him. I let you believe his temper was the only power in this family because mine worked quietly. Daniel's eyes shone behind his glasses. And when he hurt us? He asked. I made it survivable. That isn't the same as stopping it. No. The word remained between them. I rejected this station because I couldn't forgive him, Daniel said. Then you opened it, and it felt like you chose him again. Marlene reached across the desk, not for his hand, but for the invoice book. I chose my work back, she said. That is not the same thing. Outside, a branch cracked under the weight of ice. The generator faltered. The lights dimmed, recovered, then dimmed again. Tasha shouted from the bay, I need somebody to hold a light. Daniel stood before Marlene could. He picked up the battery lantern and went through the door. For the first time since he arrived, he did not ask what should be done with her. He asked Tasha where she needed him. Daniel held the lantern while Tasha opened the generator housing. Higher, she said. He raised it. Not in my eyes. He lowered it. Not on my hands. There are only so many directions. Welcome to useful work. The generator had begun starving for fuel because ice clogged the vent on the external cap. Tasha cleared it with a thin wire, wiped the cap, and restarted the engine. The office lights steadied. Daniel waited for praise. Tasha shut the panel. Put the lantern back where you found it. He carried it inside. Marlene hid a smile in the old invoice book. The loose battery cable was secured before 9. A salt truck passed westbound, spreading a narrow path over the county road. The sedan's driver left behind it. Everyone else stayed. Daniel remained too. He answered calls when the signal returned, wrote names on paper cups, and learned that a station coffee machine would overflow if he used 2 filters because one looked insufficient. Tasha made him clean it. Luis gave him a spoon. At 11, Scott finally reached them by phone. I've called everybody, he said when Marlene answered. Are you all right? We're fine. Daniel, cleaning coffee off the floor. A pause. I'm sorry I missed that. He drove down. In this? Yes. Of course he did. He thinks being sensible all year earns him one stupid decision. Marlene looked toward Daniel. He was kneeling beside the coffee machine with towels tucked beneath both knees. Where are you? She asked. Home. Power's out, but I have the propane heater in the garage, not inside. I know, Tasha. Tasha shouted from the bay. Do you? Scott heard her and laughed. I'll come when the county clears the road, he said. No need. I know. It was nearly midnight when the last waiting customer risked the short drive home behind a utility truck. Greg stretched across 2 plastic chairs. Luis slept in his van with 3 blankets. Tasha took the waiting room chair and told Marlene to use the padded one. Daniel sat in Frank's desk chair. Marlene woke before dawn to the sound of ice falling from the canopy in hard, uneven pieces. Her neck hurt, but less than it had in Frank's recliner. Someone had placed Luis's leather gloves over her hands. Daniel slept with his arms folded and his chin against his chest. His polished shoes stood on the floor beside him, darkened with salt and grease. He had put on a pair of Frank's old rubber work boots from the storage room. They were too large. For once, Marlene did not remove the evidence of his discomfort before he woke. The power returned after 7. The generator fell silent, leaving everyone briefly suspicious of the quiet. Tasha tested the lifts and compressor. Luis checked his refrigerator. Daniel unplugged the coffee machine before touching it. Scott arrived at 9 in Ray Holcomb's white van, carrying the tarps he had promised 2 days earlier. You're late, Tasha said. They're tarps. The weather was yesterday. I had to wait for a plow. He put them in Bay 3 anyway. Daniel emerged from the office in Frank's boots. Scott looked at his feet, then at the ruined dress shoes drying beside the heater. I want a picture, he said. I'll buy your silence. You need money too? Everybody needs money, according to Mom. They looked toward her. Marlene turned away and counted the register. Their laughter followed her into the office, tentative but real. The storm cost more than the station earned. Generator rental, extra fuel, ruined supplies, unpaid card slips, and a cracked canopy light erased most of the week's revenue. Marlene did not pretend otherwise, but but every handwritten charge was paid within 12 days. The restaurant manager returned with 2 boxes of windshield fluid. Greg refused payment for the generator's final day. Sheila filled both Tuesday and Thursday appointment mornings for 3 weeks. The delivery driver sent 6 company vans for scheduled maintenance after learning the station could guarantee same-day basic service. Marlene accepted the business, declined the gifts she could not justify, and wrote everything on the blue sheet. The station reached its monthly costs for the first time in February. Tasha circled the number twice. "Do not hum," she said. "I'm breathing." Loudly. They stood over the desk, looking at a profit too small to replace the furnace if it failed again. "It counts," Marlene said. "It counts once. So did the first day." Tasha tapped the payroll line. "You haven't paid yourself enough. I own the building. Buildings are terrible at buying groceries. I have savings. That disease again." Marlene sat in the padded chair. "What do you want? A 5th day for me, fewer days for you, and somebody part-time at the counter. We can afford one of those. Then stop being the only owner." The suggestion waited between them. Marlene had been thinking about it since the night Tasha came through the side window. Not forgiveness, not charity. A business arrangement with enough friction to remain honest. "I'll sell you an operating share from future earnings," she said. "Small at first. You earn it in installments." Tasha narrowed her eyes. "You already have terms. I made a list." "Of course you did. You get authority over repairs, hiring in the bay, and safety. I keep the property and final budget approval. You work 4 days, 4.5, 4. We review after 6 months. Fine." Neither reached across the desk. Tasha took the mechanical pencil from behind her ear and began correcting Marlene's percentages. Luis signed a longer lease in spring. He paid a fair market rate after showing Marlene 3 comparable spaces and accusing her of using kindness to avoid arithmetic. His clear plastic divider became a framed wall with windows, and customers began entering Bay 3, carrying torn truck seats, dining chairs, and motorcycle saddles. He continued bringing too much lunch. Marlene continued eating it. At home, she finally donated Frank's slippers. She kept his thermos beneath the station counter, not as a shrine, but because it held soup without leaking. Daniel returned 3 weeks after the storm with a replacement computer and a printed proposal for updating the station's customer system. He placed both on the counter. "This is what I recommend," he said, "but you don't have to use it." Tasha leaned toward Marlene. "Is he sick?" Daniel heard her. "I can leave. You can install it," Marlene said. He spent Saturday transferring records. When he started reorganizing the appointments by last name, Marlene moved them back by service date. He objected once, then asked how she wanted them. His dress shoes never recovered from the storm. He began wearing boots to the station. Scott's company survived by becoming smaller. He finished Riverside late, paid Brunswick on schedule, and stopped advertising custom work he could not finance. The white borrowed van lasted until he could afford a used one of his own. Its magnetic sign was smaller and stuck flat at every corner. He began repaying Marlene $50 at a time for the old rescue loan. Sometimes he missed a month. Now he called before she had to ask. The equipment remained the last family argument. Marlene offered to buy Daniel's and Scott's inherited shares through equal payments over 5 years, using station earnings rather than savings. Scott accepted immediately. He needed the money, but he also admitted he was tired of inspecting every return socket as if it contained his future. Daniel refused. Selling his share felt, he said, like severing his final connection to Frank. "You hated the station," Scott told him. "I'm allowed to hate something and keep it. That explains your garage." Months later, Daniel returned with a counteroffer. He would sell everything except the old red toolbox stored beneath the parts shelves. The toolbox had belonged to Marlene before it belonged to Frank. She bought it with her first station paycheck in 1978, when Frank still worked for Gus Remley, and she spent evenings learning the difference between tools customers requested and tools they actually needed. Daniel did not know that, Marlene told him. He ran one hand over the scratched red lid. "Then you should keep it." "No," she said. "You should know what you're keeping." The toolbox went to Cleveland. On the first anniversary of the reopening, the county paper sent a reporter named Ellen Sharp to photograph the station. Ellen interviewed Tasha beside Bay 1, Luis in front of a newly upholstered bench seat, and Scott while he waited for an oil change. Daniel arrived carrying a computer cable nobody had requested. Ellen found Marlene in the office, closing the register before lunch. People love the story, she said. A widow reopening her husband's station, even though her sons wanted to sell. Marlene looked through the window. Tasha stood with one hand on the diagnostic tablet, arguing with Scott about whether his van needed front brakes. Luis arranged takeout cartons on Frank's desk. Daniel was trying to connect the wrong cable to the printer and refusing to admit it. They have part of it right, Marlene said. Which part? My sons wanted to sell. And the rest? It was never only my husband's station. Ellen lowered her notebook. Whose is it now? Marlene considered the question. The property remained hers. Tasha owned a growing share of the business. Luis paid rent and repaired everything from office stools to torn leather seats. Scott's equipment payments arrived each month. Daniel's red toolbox sat in a clean suburban garage 2 hours away. Ownership was easy to list. Belonging was harder. Come back in 5 years, Marlene said. We'll see who's still arguing. Ellen laughed and went outside to take photographs. Marlene reduced her schedule to 4 days. On the 5th, she sometimes drove nowhere in particular. Other times she met Luis for lunch at places where he criticized the chairs. She remained lonely occasionally. She remained tired. The roof developed another leak over Bay 2, and Pump 2 still approved cards according to a private moral system. Nothing became perfect enough to stop requiring care. From the office, Tasha rang the little brass bell. Food's getting cold. Scott opened a carton. Who ordered noodles? I did, Luis said. With barbecue? You wanted barbecue. Noodles aren't a side for barbecue. Everything becomes a side if you are persistent, Marlene said. Daniel looked up from the printer. That doesn't make sense. It does here. Marlene crossed to the window. Outside, Ellen waited beneath the faded red canopy with her camera ready. The afternoon light fell across the repaired pavement, the 2 working pumps, and the yellow bag still covering the third. Marlene turned the cardboard sign. Frank's brown thumbprint remained inside the O. Open faced the road. Behind her, 4 adults argued over takeout in the station that none of them had been permitted to erase.